Chapter 303. The master of the inner mansion was called Duanmu Shinkong. He had always been elusive, so his specific cultivation was unknown. Chu Mu estimated that he was at least in the primary realm, or even beyond it. Facing the inner palace master, the palace master first gave Chu Mu a few words of praise and encouragement. Then he told Chu Mu of the duty he had to fulfill. Being on the copper sword ranking for the first time and enjoying the benefits, he had to fulfill the duty of guarding the spirit stone mine. Chu Mu came to a sudden realization. The spirit stones the sword residents consumed naturally weren't produced out of thin air. Instead, there was an enormous spirit stone mine that constantly mined and supplied them. Do you have any other questions? Duanmu Shinkong smiled slightly. Palace Master, have you heard of the Mo Luo sword sect? Chu Mu had a flash of inspiration and asked, The Maluo sword sect. Have you met them? Duanmu Shinkong suddenly stood up, with light flowing in his eyes. Yes. Chu Mu gave a simple recount of what had happened to him. I see. This time you are guarding the spiritual stone mine, so you are likely to meet the disciples of the Maluo sword sect again. Duanmu Shinkong sat down again and said lightly, In the great Kuan dynasty there are many sword sects, large and small. These sword sects are all under the jurisdiction of the royal family, which means that they are the basis for the royal family to cultivate new disciples. The great Kuan sword mansion is the main base, where the outstanding disciples of each sword sect gather. Apart from our sword mansion, there are 4 other great sword sects in the dynasty that are not under the jurisdiction of the sword mansion. They have formed their own branch. These 4 great sword sects are the Mola sword sect that you've come into contact with, the True Flame sword sect, the Blackwater sword sect, and the Guardian sword sect. Maluo sword sect, Real Flame sword sect, Blackwater sword sect, King Kong sword sect. Chu Mu secretly repeated the names of the 4 sword sections. In addition to the 4 major sword sects, there are several organizations that are independent of the sword mansion. They are not as powerful as the sword mansion, but they are several times more powerful than the high-grade sword sects. Duanmu Shinkong briefly explained. The disciples of the 4 major sword sects claim to be part of the world of sections. Their beliefs are different from ours, and they view our sword manor as enemies. They believe that we are lackeys raised by the royal family. Duanmu Shinkong said faintly. Chu Mu sensed a trace of disdain in his calm tone. Originally, the combined strength of the 4 supreme sword sects was about the same as the sword mansion. However, the catastrophe that happened to the sword mansion 60 years ago caused the overall strength of the sword mansion to decline greatly. It is not what it used to be, and it is difficult for it to recover even after a few decades. Although the sword mansion's strength still surpasses any one of the sword sects, if 2 sword sects were to join forces, they would be able to suppress the sword mansion. Fortunately, the 4 great sword sects are not harmonious with each other and are hostile towards each other. This is especially true for the Diamond Sword Sect and the Moro Sword Sect. Chu Mu listened carefully. He was very curious about the catastrophe of the sword mansion 60 years ago that Duanmu Shinkong mentioned. He could not help but recall the taboo that the elder who guarded the cultivation Holy Land had mentioned when he was in the outer mansion. Mansion Master, what exactly was the catastrophe of the sword mansion 60 years ago? He could not help but ask curiously. You don't need to know about this yet. You will only be qualified to know when you break through to the primary realm one day. Duanmu Shinkong said faintly and immediately changed the topic. This time you will be guarding the spiritual stone mine for half a year. Although it is the first time that you are on the bronze sword list, it is not for nothing. After half a year, you will be rewarded with 1 million credits when you return to the sword mansion. 1 million academic credits. Chu Mu was just worrying about how to earn a large amount of academic credits. Normally, The amount of academic credits earned from doing missions wasn't very high. At most, it would be 100,000, yet it would take a few months to complete. But now he could earn 1,000,000 credits by guarding the spiritual stone mine for half a year. Chumu even wondered if he should do it a few more times. The spiritual stone mine is rich in spiritual stones. One of them is located in the wilderness of the dynasty, at the border of the Dark Eagle dynasty. Therefore, there may not only be demonic beasts attacking, but also disciples of the 4 major sword sects and swordsmen of the Dark Eagle dynasty. Duanmu Shinkong's tone suddenly carried a trace of fierceness. No matter who they are, as long as they dare to covet the spiritual stone mine of the great Koin sword mansion, they will be killed without mercy. If you can't handle it, you can send a message to the sword mansion, and they will immediately send reinforcements. Okay, Chumu nodded. Suddenly, he had a sense of anticipation for the task of guarding the spiritual stone mine. His blood was boiling. Then Duanmu Shinkong told Chumu about the situation of the spiritual stone mine, so that Chumu could have an understanding of the spiritual stone mine in advance, so that he would not be confused when he arrived there. Don't worry about your family. I will send a few masters to secretly protect you as soon as possible. You can set off now. Finally, Duanmu Shinkong said, and sent someone to take Chumu away. The sky was blue and cloud-like as far as the eye could see. 2 red-crowned cranes spread their wings and flew high in the sky. They were extremely fast and quickly flew in the northwest direction of the great Koin dynasty. There was 1 person sitting on each red-crowned crane. One of them was Chumu, and the other was a deacon of the sword mansion. He was ordered by the mansion master to lead Chumu to the spiritual stone mine in the wilderness. If Chumu had such a task in the future, he would know the way and would not need a deacon to lead the way. Brother Chu, when you arrive at the spiritual stone mine, don't act rashly. Deacon Lin used his sword chi to send a message. Although he was much older than Chumu, he did not act like an elder. Instead, he called Chumu Brother Chu because he knew that Chumu was not a simple person. The title of the king of swordsmanship and the fact that he was ranked on the bronze sword list in less than a year after entering the inner mansion were enough to show that Chumu's future achievements were limitless. What do you mean? Chumu immediately asked. Although Duanmu Shinkong would tell Chumu about the spiritual stone mine, it was all normal. It was common knowledge that allowed Chumu to have a basic understanding of the spiritual stone mine. Brother Chu should have learned from the mansion master that our sword mansion has a total of 4 spiritual stone mines. The spiritual stone mine in the wilderness is one of them, and it is the smallest one. It is also the first time in history that a student on the bronze sword list is required to guard it. However, the spiritual stone mine is guarded by the sword mansion's sword guards all year round. Besides the sword mansion's sword guards, there are also many workers who mine the spiritual stones. Deacon Lin slowly said, Actually, the sword mansion has the students on the bronze sword list guard the spiritual stone mine. It is a test and experience for the students on the bronze sword list. Chumu heard this and nodded. According to Duanmu Shinkong, there was more than 1 sword mansion's sword guards guarding the spiritual stone mine in the wilderness. Each of them was at least in the Qi transformation realm, and the sword guard commander was even in the Qi high realm. Although the students on the bronze sword list were powerful and had the ability to fight beyond their level, they were nothing in front of a sword guard at the Qi high realm. The reason why they let the students on the bronze sword list guard the spiritual stone mine for the first time was to give the students a chance to gain experience. At the same time, it was also a test to see the students' potential in all aspects. The truly powerful warriors could withstand the test. True gold was not afraid of fire. As far as I know, the sword guards of the spiritual stone mine have already formed their own forces because they are stationed there all year round. Although they cannot and do not dare to leave the sword mansion's jurisdiction, because they are far from the sword mansion, they have formed their own forces. Deacon Lin said, Although the students sent by the Sword Mansion are not directly under the Sword Guard Commander's jurisdiction, to a certain extent they still need to cooperate with him. Yes, Chu Mu nodded. In the past, there were some students who thought that they were great just because they were on the Bronze Sword list. They were a little arrogant. In the end, once they arrived at the spiritual stone mine, they looked down on others and got into all sorts of conflicts with the sword guards of the spiritual stone mine. In the end, they were defeated. Deacon Lin looked at Chu Mu's expression and found that Chu Mu was not displeased. He continued, I am not teaching Brother Chu what to do. I am just letting Brother Chu know the situation of the spiritual stone mine first. These are useful to me. Please enlighten me. Chu Mu said. His humble words and attitude made Deacon Lin very happy. Okay, then I will continue. Deacon Lin laughed. As the saying goes, the sky is high and the emperor is far away. In addition, the spiritual stone mine in the desolate border has the smallest output of the 4 major spiritual stone mines in the Sword Mansion. So the Sword Mansion usually does not pay much attention to the spiritual stone mine in the desolate border. Therefore, the sword guards of the spiritual stone mine in the desolate border have become local tyrants. They say what they say, and no one can violate them. Otherwise, they will be punished. Therefore, my suggestion is that when Brother Chu gets there, just do what you need to do. Don't have any interactions with the sword guards, and don't have any conflicts with them. When the time is up in half a year, you will naturally return to the Sword Mansion and live in peace. Deacon Lin said. His attitude was very sincere, making people feel that these words came from the bottom of his heart. Has there been a death of a Bronze Sword List student in the past? Chu Mu suddenly asked. Yes, there were 2 deaths of Bronze Sword List students in the Desolate Borders spiritual stone mine 10 years ago. However, the results of the investigation were that the 2 students were careless. One died at the hands of a demonic beast, and the other died at the hands of a swordsman from the Dark Hawk dynasty, Deacon Lin said. All right. How strong are the sword guards in the spiritual stone mine? Chu Mu thought. Although he knew that the sword guards in the Desolate Borders spiritual stone mine were at least at the Qi transformation realm, and there were even sword warriors at the Qi high realm. However, he did not know the exact strength of the sword guards. The sword guards of the spiritual stone mine are divided into ordinary sword guards, sword guard squad leaders, sword guard squad leaders, sword guard squad leaders, sword guard vice commanders, and sword guard commanders. Deacon Lin immediately explained normal sword guards are usually at the Qi transformation realm. Squad leaders are at the Qi transformation realm. Squad leaders are Deshang at the Qi transformation realm. Squad leaders are at the Qi transformation realm. Squad leaders are at the Qi transformation realm. Vice commanders are at the Qi high realm, and commanders should be at the small Qi high realm. This is what I know before, but now it might be even more powerful. A squad leader is in charge of 10 normal sword guards. A squad leader is in charge of 3 squads, and there are 4 squad leaders in total. Each of them is in charge of 3 squads. I heard that the commanders are in seclusion all year round, and the 2 vice commanders take turns to take care of the daily chores. After listening to Deacon Lin's explanation, Chu Mu had a deeper understanding of the spiritual stone mine in the desolate border. He had his own thoughts, but he remembered everything that Deacon Lin said in his heart. He was very grateful, as this information was very useful to him. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 304. From the Great Kuin Sword Mansion's Black Dragon Mountain to the northwest desolate spiritual stone mine, including the rest along the way. It took a total of 8 days to arrive. The desolate border was indeed the desolate border. At a glance, it was a boundless barren land. Not a single blade of grass grew. The land was dark brown, appearing desolate and heavy. Chu Mu also noticed that on this barren land there was a huge city. According to Deacon Lin, this city was called the Desolate Border City. One of the 4 spiritual stone mines of the Great Kuin Sword Mansion was located in the desolate mountain range, 100 miles away from the desolate border city. A section of the desolate mountain range was within the Great Kuan dynasty, and another section was within the Dark Eagle dynasty. Therefore, the desolate mountain range became a place where the Great Kuan dynasty and the Dark Eagle dynasty fought over. The Great Kuan dynasty naturally wanted to include the entire desolate mountain range in their territory. The Dark Eagle dynasty also had the same idea. Therefore, the two dynasties were in a state of hostility. Also, because the desolate mountain range corresponded to the word desolate, the resources were not as abundant. Therefore, the two dynasties did not send troops to guard it, resulting in a huge conflict. As for the origin of the name, it was said that there were desolate beasts residing in the desolate mountain range. Commander Yen, that Chumu has already arrived. He is waiting outside. In a cave in the desolate mountain range, in the desolate border spiritual stone mine of the Great Kuan dynasty, a swordsman wearing light armor bowed to the swordsman sitting high above. Oh, he is already here. The person called Commander Yen grinned. His eyes emitted a strange light. He then waved his hand. Go, bring him to see me. Yes. The swordsman immediately turned and left the cave. Leader, this Chumu has finally come. As long as we properly arrange things, he won't be able to return. When that time comes. A swordsman beside Leader, Yen let out a smile and made a throat-slitting motion as he spoke in a low voice. Swallow those thoughts. Don't say anything you shouldn't say. Even if Chumu dies, he will die in the mouth of a demonic beast, or in the hands of a swordsman from the four major sword sects or the Dark Hawk dynasty. It has nothing to do with us, Commander Yen immediately scolded. Yes. It has nothing to do with us. The swordsman hurriedly nodded and bowed repeatedly. After Deacon Lin brought Chumu here, he brought Chumu's red-crowned crane back to the Great Kuan Sword Mansion. Before he left, he specially instructed Chumu to avoid any conflicts with the sword guards here. Chumu didn't like unnecessary conflicts either. He was here on a voluntary mission. Once half a year was up, he would be able to return to the sword residence and receive 1,000,000 credits to continue his meditation in the sword comprehension room. Unfortunately, there wasn't a sword comprehension room here. Furthermore, this mission came too suddenly. As he thought about it, Chumu sized up his surroundings. It was very desolate. There wasn't a single blade of grass growing on the mountain. There were dark brown rocks everywhere. The wind that blew was as sharp as a knife. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand it at all. Furthermore, the spirit energy here was much thinner than in the sword residence. However, Chumu realized that although it was thin, it was very pure. This kind of purity is probably not inferior to the heaven-level sword tower, he thought to himself. At that moment, a figure rapidly flew over from afar and stopped in front of Chumu. Chumu! Commander Yen wants to see you, the sword guard said coldly as he looked at Chumu. Chumu didn't like the word summon, because he wasn't Commander Yan's subordinate. It was his first time here, and Chumu didn't know where he would live. He couldn't just stand in the wind and sun in the wilderness. Moreover, it was inevitable that he would come into contact with the sword guard. No matter what, he had to meet them and do what he had to do. Lead the way, Chumu said indifferently. He glanced at the sword guard, who was at the small success stage of chi transformation. Chumu's tone made the sword guard angry. Sword guards were the local tyrants here. Other than their superiors, they didn't care about anyone else. Chumu raised his eyelids, and his eyes emitted a sharp light. The sword guard's heart trembled. He felt that Chumu's gaze was very terrifying. It was as if two swords were piercing through him. He just remembered that Chumu's cultivation level was much higher than his. Moreover, he was a student on the bronze sword ranking. He was afraid that Chumu's strength was not inferior to a normal chi transformation sword artist. There will be a time to deal with you, the sword guard said secretly. He snorted and turned around to lead the way. In the sword sect, the sword mansion was where the sword artists lived. However, in the Tianhuang mountain range, The terrain was uneven, and there were even rocks everywhere. Although the sword mansion could be built, it would take more resources. Therefore, the sword guards used the local materials and dug out caves for them to live in. Chu Mu didn't know how many caves there were. He followed the sword guard and entered one of the caves. The entrance of the cave was 3 meters high and 3 meters wide. It was covered with a seal. This seal had a strong defensive power that could block the attack of a Qi Sea Realm warrior, so the cave wouldn't collapse. The interior of the cave was very large. It could accommodate hundreds of people at the same time. After entering the cave, Chu Mu quickly glanced around. Above the cave, there were luminous pearls arranged in a row, illuminating the entire cave as if it was daytime. The interior of the cave was very spacious. It could accommodate hundreds of people at the same time without being crowded. Chu Mu also found that there were several 1-meter-tall entrances in the cave. They seemed to be caves within caves. "Commander Yen, I have brought him here." The sword guard bowed to Commander Yen, who was sitting at the head of the table, and said respectfully, "Very good, you can leave first." Commander Yen waved his hand and said, "Yes." The sword guard turned around and glanced at Chu Mu. It seemed that there was a sneer on his face, which made Chu Mu frown slightly. Chu Mu immediately relaxed and remained calm. "Haha, Chu Mu, welcome." Commander Yen stood up and let out a hearty laugh. He gave off a very heroic and refreshing feeling. It was easy to have a good impression of him. However, as soon as Chu Mu entered the cave, he felt uncomfortable. Coupled with the ability of the sword observation technique, he knew that Commander Yen was a person who looked boorish on the outside but had a very opposite heart. He was already secretly vigilant. "My name is Yen Kaming. I am one of the captains here. You can call me Commander Yen." Yen Kaming smiled. He strode over and reached out to pat Chu Mu's shoulder. Chu Mu's body swayed slightly, causing Yen Kaming's palm to fall on empty air. Regardless of whether the other party had a friendly purpose or some other purpose, Chu Mu would not let a stranger touch him for the first time. Even if it was some familiar people, he did not like to be touched casually. Yen Kaming obviously did not expect Chu Mu to avoid him. He was slightly stunned, and a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. However, he was also a rather shrewd person. He did not get angry immediately. Instead, he smiled indifferently and withdrew his hand. He turned around and walked back to his seat. He sat down again and looked at Chu Mu in a condescending manner. "Actually, it is enough for us to guard the desolate Spirit Stone mine. It is a bit of a waste for the Sword Mansion to send a disciple on the bronze sword ranking here." Yen Kaming stared at Chu Mu's eyes and slowly said with a trace of pressure, "After hearing this, as long as one was not an idiot, they would know that the meaning was the opposite." However, Chu Mu did not change his expression and said, "We will follow the Sword Mansion's arrangements." Chu Mu did not know about Yen Kaming's sword arts and realm, but his sword Qi had reached the peak of the Qi transformation realm. To be able to become a captain, his strength should not be weak. If it was a normal Qi transformation de Shang swordsman facing this kind of oppressive gaze, their aura would weaken and their confidence would weaken. However, Chu Mu was not afraid. Even the aura of a Qi Sea Realm swordsman could not make Chu Mu take a step back. "That is true. This is the Sword Mansion's arrangement. We will follow it." Yen Kaming retracted his gaze and leaned back with a faint smile. Chu Mu could even see a trace of disdain in his eyes. The living conditions in the desolate Spirit Stone mine naturally cannot be compared to the living conditions in the Sword Mansion. "We are all rough people and have already gotten used to the environment here. Brother Chu, I can tell with one look that you have an extraordinary background. If you can't stand the rough environment here, you will have to bear with it." "No worries," Chu Mu replied indifferently. This caused Yen Kaming to almost draw his sword and kill Chu Mu in a fit of rage. Every word of his was carefully thought out. His goal was to weaken Chu Mu's aura bit by bit. He wanted to put Chu Mu in a weak position so that it would be easier to deal with him. However, he did not expect that Chu Mu was not afraid of his aura. Although he did not retaliate verbally, his answers were often irrelevant. It made him feel as if he had punched with all his strength but landed on cotton. He was unable to say what he wanted to say next. "Leader, I heard that the students on the Sword Mansion's bronze sword ranking all have outstanding talents and extraordinary strength. Each of them has the strength to challenge those of a higher level." The sword guard who had been sitting at the side and not speaking suddenly stood up and glanced at Chu Mu. He looked at Yen Kaming and said, "Since I knew this, I have been itching to fight. After all, I have challenged those of a higher level. I really want to know how my strength compares to the students on the Sword Mansion's bronze sword ranking. I wonder if Brother Chu will give me this opportunity." As he spoke, this person once again faced Chu Mu with an overbearing expression. His tone did not seem to be a question, but a notice to Chu Mu. "Okay, I approve your suggestion. Brother Chu, I think there is no time like the present. Why don't you fight now and let him know the power of the students on the Sword Mansion's bronze sword ranking? Otherwise, he will be arrogant just because he has killed enemies of a higher level a few times." Yen Kaming clapped his hands. He did not care whether Chu Mu agreed or not. He immediately laughed and made the decision. "Okay." Chu Mu showed a faint smile and agreed. Chu Mu could understand what the other meant. It was nothing more than a show of strength. What did he mean by letting him know the power of the students on the bronze sword ranking? His meaning was the opposite. He wanted to let the students on the bronze sword ranking know the power of this sword guard. This kind of unnecessary trouble could have been avoided, but since the other had taken the initiative to come to him, Chu Mu had no reason to back down. He was just a Qi transforming Desheng, peak swordsman. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 305. There was also a simple and crude fighting arena in the Spirit Stone mine at the border. It was a purely natural one. The so-called purely natural meant that there were no traces of artificial excavation or polishing. In a sense, this fighting arena could not be considered a fighting arena. There are countless rocks standing in a forest. These rocks were uneven in height and size. Chu Mu was standing on one of the more protruding rocks. The guy who had claimed that he had killed several swordsmen was one of the 3 platoon leaders under Yen Kaming. His surname was Zhao, and his name was Zhao Hongji. He was also the strongest of the 3 platoon leaders. At this moment, Zhao Hongji was standing on another protruding rock. The tip of his foot was on the very tip of the rock. He pulled out his sword and pointed it down diagonally. When the wind blew, his black hair fluttered. He looked very elegant. The battle had not yet begun. Yen Kaming, the platoon leader, was standing on the other side as the referee. At the same time, people were constantly rushing over from afar. All of these people who had rushed over would first come before Yen Kaming and respectfully salute him with their swords, addressing him as Commander Yen. Obviously, they were all sword guards in Yen Kaming's team and were under his command. According to Deacon Lin, there would always be 1 commander, 2 vice-commanders, and 4 captains in the desolate borders Spirit Stone mines. Each captain would have 102 sword guards under him, including the squad captains and squad captains. There were a few dozen people who arrived one after another. Chu Mu swept his eyes over them and discovered that they were all wearing standard light armor. Ordinary swordsman's light armor was black iron. Platoon leader's light armor was bronze, and platoon leader's light armor was silver white. For example, Zhao Hongji, who was standing dozens of meters away from Chu Mu, was wearing silver white light armor. Yen Kaming, the platoon leader, was wearing light gold light armor. Thus, the light armor was used to distinguish his status. The sword guard who brought Chu Mu to Chu Mu's Immortal's Cave was also among the dozens of people. He was staring at Chu Mu with a sneer on his face. "Who is the person confronting Zhao Zhong, DUI?" Although some of the swordsmen had also received the news and rushed over, they did not know the specific situation. That person just came from the sword mansion. The swordsman who led the way for Chu Mu immediately sneered and explained, "I heard that he was ranked 100th on the sword mansion's bronze sword list. He was sent by the sword mansion to guard us for half a year." "Oh, so he is a student from the sword mansion's bronze sword ranking." The sword guards at the side immediately understood. It is said that the students on the sword mansion's bronze sword ranking are all very strong. Every one of them has the ability to fight above their level. "I wonder if that is true," a sword guard muttered. Speaking of which, apart from the commander and deputy commander who were directly appointed by the sword sect, most of the sword guards were replenished by the platoon. After all, there were too many battles and deaths were inevitable. Once a person died, they needed to be replenished to maintain the overall strength of the platoon. The source of replenishment for these sword guards came from the workers who mined the Spirit Stone mine. Once their cultivation broke through to the Chi transformation realm, they were qualified to join the sword guard team. Another part came from the scattered swordsmen in the border cities. Although these people knew that they belonged to the Great Kuin Sword Mansion, they had never been to the Great Kuin Sword Mansion. Everything about the Sword Mansion was only hearsay. Therefore, they paid special attention to the people from the Sword Mansion. When they heard that Chu Mu was a student from the Sword Mansion's bronze sword list, they were very curious. Since there is such a saying, it should be true. However, I heard that the Sword Mansion's bronze sword ranking has a total of 100 people. This Chu, whatever person, is ranked 100th, so he must be at the bottom of the bronze sword ranking. No matter how strong he is, he can't be that strong. The sword guards who spoke were all selected to join the sword guard team in the past 1 or 2 years. This was because the last time Chu Mu came here to guard the copper sword ranking was 2 years ago. If it wasn't for Huangfu Songyue breaking through to the Qi High realm, the 100 names on a copper sword ranking probably wouldn't have changed. The strength of the students on the bronze sword ranking is indeed very good. They do have the strength to fight above their cultivation level. However, they have a weakness. A squad leader smiled coldly and said, "Like us, we have to guard the Spirit Stone mine. From time to time, we have to fight to the death with demonic beasts. Sometimes, we have to fight the swordsmen of the Dark Hawk dynasty. Sometimes, we even encounter the swordsmen of the 4 great swordsmen. Life and death battles are inevitable. In such a harsh environment, our fighting ability and survival ability are stronger than the students from the Sword Mansion. They are just a bunch of greenhouse flowers who flatter each other." That's right. The students of the Sword Mansion are just a bunch of greenhouse flowers. I have heard that some of the students of the Sword Mansion were so scared by demonic beasts that they wet their pants on the spot. Once this was said, it immediately caused a burst of laughter. They did not deliberately lower their voices when talking, so everyone present heard it. Chu Mu was no exception, but he did not care. When Zhao Zhongdiui was in the Qi transformation realm, he killed a peak swordsman of the Deshang realm. When Deshang was at the peak swordsman of the Qi transformation realm, he also killed a peak swordsman of the Qi transformation realm. He has rich fighting experience and amazing strength. These students of the Sword Mansion are definitely not his match. The discussion of these sword guards was partly because they were unintentionally expressing their opinions, and partly because they were instructed to maliciously disturb Chu Mu's mentality. "Chu Mu, I know that you students of the Sword Mansion usually fight with each other. It is difficult for you to even be injured. In terms of life and death fighting experience, you are definitely not good. There is no way you can compare with us." Zhao Hongji opened his mouth and said to Chu Mu, "So don't worry, we're only going to spar. The goal is to see if my strength is enough to enter the bronze sword ranking. That's all, so I won't kill you. How about this? I am a few years older than you, so I will not bully you. I will let you attack first." Zhao Hongji said in a somewhat prickly manner. Hearing him say that he was a few years older, The corner of Chu Mu's mouth twitched slightly. Chu Mu was not even 20 years old, but Zhao Hongji was definitely over 30 years old. Was he pretending to be young? You attack first, lest you lose willingly, Chu Mu said indifferently. Wow, this student of the Sword Mansion is so arrogant. He is really reckless. He actually wants Zhao Zhongdui to attack first. He is really stupid. He probably doesn't know that Zhao Zhongdui's sword is extremely sharp. If that is the case, then I will not be polite. Zhao Hongji and Yan Keiming's eyes met in an instant. Zhao Hongji let out an excited shout. Innate sword qi surged out from his body, and crackling sounds could be heard. It was obvious that he had cultivated the thunder element, which had an extremely strong destructive power. Streaks of dark purple innate thunder sword qi surged towards the sword in Zhao Hongji's hand. Amidst the crackling sounds, Zhao Hongji's thunder sword qi was infused with the power of the concept of thunder, causing the thunder sword qi in Zhao Hongji's hand to flicker with arcs of electricity. A terrifying aura spread out. It was frightening. In an instant, Zhao Hongji's sword moved. His body moved as well. Everyone only heard the rumble of a thunderclap across the sky. A dark purple lightning bolt flashed in front of their eyes, carrying a terrifying destructive force as it blasted towards Chu Mu. It was incomparably sharp, incomparably ferocious, and inconceivably fast. Zhao Hongji knew how to fight very well. He was worthy of living in a place where life and death battles were frequent. First, he used his aura to intimidate his opponent and complete the accumulation process. Then he attacked with an ancient sword move. He wanted to end his opponent in one strike to avoid a protracted battle. What he said before about being merciful was a lie. If Chu Mu believed it, then he would be a fool. A very powerful sword move. The purity of the thunder element innate sword qi is close to the innate sword qi of an ordinary qi transformation swordsman. His comprehension of thunder element innate sword qi has reached 45%. Chu Mu's eyes reflected a dark purple lightning as he silently spoke. His expression didn't change at all. When this fell into Yan Keiming's eyes, his brows slightly creased. In the next moment, the dark purple thunderbolt had already approached Chu Mu. It was as if it would blast Chu Mu into pieces in an instant. The beheading wind sword was unsheathed. It seemed to be very slow, allowing people to see the trajectory of Chu Mu's sword. A dark golden glow flashed, and everyone's body shivered for no reason. They couldn't help but shiver, feeling a chill invade their bodies and make their hair stand on end. Chu Mu's sword slashed forward. He did not use any ancient sword moves. It was purely an ordinary slash. Everyone only saw a blur before their eyes. Chu Mu's sword increased in speed. It cut through the void and cut into the dark purple thunderbolt. A rumbling sound was heard. In the next moment, a figure wrapped in dark purple was sent flying backward at an even faster speed. In the blink of an eye, it flew back several tens of meters and crashed into a huge rock. With a loud rumbling sound, the entire rock shattered into pieces. The so-called sword guards were all dumbfounded. They stared at Chu Mu, who was slowly sheathing his sword, looking at his calm expression, and then at Zhao Hongji, who was buried under the shattered rock. They suddenly shivered and felt a chill in their hearts. One move. In less than a second, Zhao Hongji was defeated. Moreover, he was defeated so thoroughly that no one knew if he was dead or alive. Was this Chu Mu a monster? Yan Keiming's eyes were incomparably cold. However, his heart was burning with rage. He wanted nothing more than to immediately draw his sword and kill Chu Mu. However, he did not dare. Not to mention whether he could kill Chu Mu or not. Once Chu Mu died here, the Sword Mansion would definitely investigate. At that time, he would not be able to escape responsibility. As a person who cherished his life, Yan Keiming would never do such a thing. If he did, he would not leave any evidence. Trash! Cursing in his heart, Yen Kaming looked at the pile of shattered rocks and ordered the people behind him, "Go and dig him out." Yes. A few sword guards who were under Zhao Hongji's command immediately flew out and began to dig the rocks. "You, bring Chu Mu to his cave residence." Yen Kaming pointed at an ordinary sword guard and ordered. His tone was filled with anger. Yes. The sword guard was shocked and quickly saluted with his sword. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 306. The cave residence that Chu Mu was arranged to live in was the one that every bronze sword roll student would live in. Because no one had lived in it for a long time, it was covered in dust. After spending a long time, Chu Mu finally tidied up the cave. It was clean and spotless, and then he activated the seal. The activation of the seal required constant consumption of energy, and the source of this energy was spirit stones. No one had lived in this cave residence for 2 years, so naturally no one would waste spirit stones to activate the seal. After activating it, Chu Mu found that there was a strange movement in a corner of the cave residence. Looking at the corner, he saw a small seal. This seal had nothing to do with the seal of the cave residence. It seemed to have always been open and never closed. In this small seal, there was a sword token and a note. The note said that the Sword Mansion student had to use their own identity, sword token, to obtain the Mining Area Guardian sword token. After obtaining the Mining Area Guardian sword token, the seal seemed to have disappeared. However, Chu Mu knew that as long as he put the Mining Area Guardian sword token back in, the seal would automatically activate and protect the Mining Area Guardian sword token. This cave residence was not as big as Yen Kaming's cave residence. It was only about 100 square meters in size and about 7 to 8 meters tall. There was a bed, a table, and a chair. There was nothing else, and it looked very simple. Chu Mu had lived in even the most simple places before. He did not care, as he was not here to enjoy. After cleaning up, Chu Mu sat on the bed and pondered. As soon as he arrived, he tried to intimidate me. Perhaps this is a very normal thing, but Zhao Hongji's attack was very heavy. That sword strike was clearly intended to severely injure me. It was not in line with the purpose of intimidating me. Chu Mu thought to himself. His eyes were deep. I have never met them before. If I was not sent here by the Sword Mansion, I would not have interacted with them. There is no enmity between us. What's more, anyone who can become a platoon leader isn't stupid. He should know the consequences of provoking the enemy. But he still did this to me, and Yen Kaming didn't stop him. There's something to think about. Although he was very puzzled, Chu Mu didn't think of anything fishy in the end. He just felt that Yen Kaming and Zhao Hongji were targeting him. He was afraid that there was some conspiracy or there was a mastermind behind it. Since I can't figure it out, I'll just focus on my cultivation. If there really is some kind of scheme, they will definitely make a follow-up move. There will be a time when the cat will be out of the bag. Chu Mu said to himself as he sat on the bed and began to cultivate his heavenly Yuan sword chi. As soon as he started cultivating, pure spiritual chi came from all directions and entered his body. Although the quantity of this kind of pure spirit chi could not be compared to the heaven-grade sword tower, it was not inferior to the profound grade sword tower. Moreover, the degree of purity was comparable to the spirit chi in the heaven-grade sword tower in the inner mansion. It was no wonder that Zhao Hongji was only at the peak of chi transforming realm, but the purity of his sword chi was infinitely close to that of an ordinary swordsman in the exceptional realm of chi transforming realm. Unfortunately, most of the swordsmen here were only at level 8 or level 9. Many of them were even at level 10. Very few of them could reach level 7, and none of them could surpass level 7. After cultivating for a while, Chu Mu could not feel the progress of his sword chi cultivation. At this level, it was very difficult to improve. The key was to persevere. After getting out of bed, Chumu pulled out his sword and practiced the basic swordsmanship several times. Then he controlled the power of his sword and practiced the shocking wind swordsmanship several times. After he finished cultivating, he thought for a while and stepped out of the cave residence. Since he had come to the desolate spirit stone mine, it would be unreasonable if he didn't take a look at the mining area. Moreover, Chumu was curious about the mining of spirit stones. The news of him defeating Zhao Hongji had already spread. Now, most of the swordsmen in the desolate spirit stone mine had heard of Chumu's name. Only the swordsmen who were out on patrol or patrolling in the mine had not received the news. Therefore, Chumu quickly asked about the entrance of the mine. Not every swordsman was as hostile to Chumu as Yan Keiming and Zhao Hongji. The entrance of the mine was not as dark as he remembered. There were many luminous pearls hanging at the entrance, making it as bright as day. There were swordsmen standing on both sides of the entrance. When they saw Chumu coming, they immediately stopped him. Chumu did not say anything. He directly took out the sword token of Mine Guardian. As sword guards, at the beginning they were informed of the mining area's guardian sword token. Therefore, when they saw Chumu show his sword token, the two of them thought for a moment and hastily stepped aside to let Chumu enter the mine. Sir, you have to be careful. If you encounter an adult spirit-eating beast, it's best to leave immediately. One of the swordsmen reminded Chumu's back. Chumu stopped and turned around to look. He asked, "What is a spirit-eating beast?" Sir, a spirit-eating beast is a kind of strange beast that devours spirit stones. The strength of an infant spirit-eating beast is equivalent to a sword Qi realm swordsman. The strength of an adult spirit-eating beast is equivalent to a Qi transformation realm swordsman. They are very powerful, the swordsman quickly explained. Thank you. With a trace of doubt, Chumu turned around and strode into the mine. This spirit stone mine was a bit similar to a coal mine. Of course, compared to a coal mine that could collapse, this spirit stone mine was more stable. At the very least, there had never been a case of a spirit stone mine in the desolate borderlands collapsing. The left, right, top, and even the ground under his feet all had traces of man-made excavation. This made the tunnel very wide, about 3 meters wide and 3 meters high. Chumu walked forward for about 1,000 meters. He felt as if he was constantly walking down, as if he had entered the belly of a mountain and was constantly going underground. He didn't care much about this because spirit stone mines usually grew from underground. The spirit stone mines in the desolate borderlands had been mined for so many years and still had not been completely mined. Now, they were definitely mining deeper and deeper. As he walked, 3 forks appeared in front of him. Chumu randomly chose one of them and strode forward. There were many forks in the mine, crisscrossing each other. Fortunately, there were signs hanging on the walls of the forks. There were arrows that pointed the way, so people could refer to them when going out and not get lost in the mine. Not long after, Chumu heard a tinkling sound. After walking for a while, he saw dozens of workers waving their pickaxes and mining the spirit stone mine. It didn't mean that they could mine spirit stones at will. When they dug with their pickaxes, they often broke through the walls, rocks, mud, and so on. Spirit stones were extremely hard, so mere pickaxes couldn't damage them at all. Therefore, once their pickaxes touched something hard, it would usually be a spirit stone. Chumu glanced around. What surprised him was that these workers were all in the sword Qi boundary. They were at least at the 4th level of the sword Qi boundary, and the highest was at the 10th level of the sword Qi boundary. He couldn't help but sigh. In Kaiyang City, a sword Qi boundary swordsman had a very high status, but here they could only be miners. Chumu's arrival didn't attract anyone's attention. For these miners, the more spirit stone mines they mined, the more they would earn. There were countless sword Qi boundary swordsmen, and they were only at the bottom. The dozens of miners were all men. The younger ones were in their 20s, and the older ones were in their 40s. All of them worked very hard, and the sound of metal clanking continuously rang out. After watching for a while, Chu-Mu was about to leave when he suddenly heard a rumbling sound. It was as if the wall had collapsed. Dust and smoke billowed. The dozens of miners all retreated and stared at the dust and smoke. Chu-Mu also looked and saw through the dust and smoke and saw a hole. It turned out that the miners' pickaxes had opened up the mine and connected it to the other side. When the dust and smoke settled, the dozens of miners looked at each other. Suddenly, a sharp-eyed young man shouted excitedly, "Spirit stones! Look, there are so many spirit stones in there." As he spoke, he was about to rush in. If the spirit stones were mined and turned in, they would be able to get a lot of dividends. Wait. The oldest miner hurriedly grabbed the young man's arm. It's different from the outside. There are no traces of pickaxes. It looks more like it was gnawed by teeth. You can't go in. Could it be a spirit eater? Another older miner's face changed as he exclaimed, "It's possible. Don't make a sound. Be careful and leave here first." The oldest miner's face was dignified. He whispered and urged everyone to leave. "Wait, Uncle Zhang, if it's a young spirit eater, once we catch it and sell it, it will be worth tens of thousands of low-grade spirit stones." A middle-aged man's tone became excited. He was eager to give it a try. "Greed will only get you killed. Hurry up and leave." In the memory of the old man called Uncle Zhang, some of his companions died under the claws of Spirit Eater. It was very miserable. "If you want to leave, you can leave. I'm going to look for a young Spirit Eater. If I find it, I'll be rich." The middle-aged man's heart was filled with greed. He strode inside. "Ha ha ha ha! So many spirit stones, not only are there low-grade spirit stones, there are also middle-grade spirit stones, I'm rich, I'm rich." The middle-aged man's loud laughter constantly came from inside, and some of the greedy miners couldn't bear it any longer and rushed in. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Some of them even began to feel tempted. At this time, a few shrill screams sounded. It was hair-raising. Uncle Zhang and the others' complexions changed drastically. They turned pale. "Hurry up! Go and inform the sword guard." Uncle Zhang and the others quickly shouted. Suddenly, one by one, they fled in panic. However, Chu-Mu saw that when they fled, they didn't run around like headless flies. In the end, not only were they unable to escape, but they were also injured. "Young man, hurry up and leave. The strength of a spirit eater is very terrible." Uncle Zhang rushed past Chu-Mu's side. He hurriedly said out of kindness, "Thank you." Chu-Mu said. He didn't turn around and leave. Uncle Zhang saw this and sighed. He couldn't do anything if they didn't listen to his advice. He couldn't stay and wait for death with them. After a while, Uncle Zhang and dozens of miners disappeared without a trace. Only Chu-Mu was left. Spirit Eater. With a little curiosity, Chu-Mu walked forward. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 307, December 31st, 2012. 6 Paths of Samsara made a promise to everyone that I would release at least 4 chapters a day for the entire month of January 2013. Now, 6 Paths of Samsara has not only fulfilled my promise, but also exceeded it by releasing a total of 138 chapters. I don't know what other people think, but in my mind, authors and readers respect each other. A man can't live without integrity, so promises shouldn't be made easily. Otherwise, if you can't keep your promise, you'll hurt others and yourself. When I made the promise, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to do it. Based on my writing speed of 1,000 words per hour, it would be very difficult to write 12,000 a day. I also had to think about the plot, and so on. Fortunately, I did it, and I did it even better. The high intensity of writing has increased my writing speed, but at the same time, my body isn't in a good condition. Maybe it's because I have to sit in front of the computer for at least 12 hours a day. Now, my shoulders and neck are very uncomfortable. It's like they're sore and painful. In short, it's very uncomfortable. I have to endure the discomfort, and right? Also, because I can't sleep well while thinking about the plot, and so on, sometimes I'll be absent-minded. In short, Six Paths of Samsara is a man of his word. Everyone should be satisfied with the month of hard work. Since that's the case, I can't be short of subscriptions. This is a simple summary of January, and by the way, the outlook for February. In February, Six Paths of Samsara will release at least 2 chapters a day, but he doesn't promise how much. There are 3 reasons. First, because of my body, I'm very tired. Because I mainly write with my right hand, I feel like I'm going to be crippled. Not only physically, but also mentally. So, Six Paths of Samsara needs to rest. Plus, I've spent a lot of time writing this month, so I've neglected my girlfriend. Although she supports me, I don't feel good. I can't always neglect my girlfriend. Second, because Chinese New Year is approaching, as the eldest son of the family, I have to help more or less. Especially during Chinese New Year, it's impossible to write or visit relatives and friends. I believe everyone has to do that too. So, in order to ensure that I'll keep updating during Chinese New Year, I have to save up a few days before Chinese New Year's Eve. Third, due to the storyline, I realized that my control over the storyline was still far from enough. I was unable to enter the next climax immediately after one climax. It was precisely because of this that there were some unavoidable transitions and troughs. This was also an opportunity and process for the samsara to learn and improve himself. He needed more time to think and settle down so that the subsequent storyline would be even more exciting. Based on the above 3 points, it was guaranteed that there would be at least 2 updates a day in February, depending on the situation. I'm guessing that since the 6 Paths of Samsara's promise was exceeded in January, no one would give up on the 6 Paths of Samsara just because the update in February wasn't as good as the one in January. Swordsman, the dominator of the 6 Paths, needs your support, because you are the driving force for the dominator of the 6 Paths. Dear ones, give me the power of the samsara. I need you. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 308. I am very grateful to all the swordsmen who voted for me. However, there are too many people and I can't see the names of some of them. I would also like to thank D. Tianfeng and Abt 5432 for their tips. I would also like to thank everyone who has come with me. Today, I will continue to fight to move the 6 Dao. However, my shoulders are sore and I don't know how much I can fight for. I will try my best to explode with all my might. The screams quieted down and dissipated into nothingness. Chu Mu appeared at the entrance, opened up by the mining workers. The entrance was not big and only allowed 1 person to enter at a time. Yi Shiwen stood at the entrance and looked inside. Sure enough, many spirit stones were irregularly inlaid on the walls. Some were low-grade spirit stones, while some were middle-grade spirit stones. There were at least several thousand spirit stones. It was no wonder that those people would be blinded by greed. Chu Mu was very happy when he got a few low-grade spirit stones. If he saw these things at that time, he would be greedy too. Taking a step forward, he appeared inside. This place was like a large hall. It was about 8 meters tall and hundreds of square meters in area. There were marks left behind by some kind of sharp teeth on the walls. Chu Mu glanced around and his pupils shrank. There were a few corpses dozens of meters in front of him. Blood flowed and dyed the ground red. Those corpses were the ones who came here out of greed. Behind the corpses, there was a spirit-eating beast. It was sticking out its pink tongue and licking the blood on the ground as if it was nectar. Spirit-eating beast. These words flashed through Chu Mu's mind. The spirit-eating beast's body was silver gray. Its body was covered with protruding scales. Its overall appearance was very similar to an animal on Earth, a pangolin. Compared to a pangolin, this spirit-eating beast was obviously much bigger. It was comparable to a calf. Its limbs were short, and its claws were terrifyingly sharp. Its abdomen was almost close to the ground. The corpses had the same claw marks on them. Their skin and flesh were torn. Chu Mu discovered that this spirit eater had no eyes, or perhaps he couldn't find where its eyes were. It looked very strange, regardless of whether this spirit eater was a spirit eater or not. Chu Mu frowned slightly as he watched it lick human blood in front of him. He unsheathed his wind-cutter sword, and a beam of Tianyuan sword chi shot out, carrying with it the power of tearing through the air. The distance of several dozen meters was covered in an instant. The heaven origin sword chi directly hit the body of the spirit-eating beast. It was like a wave of air hitting a rock, producing the sound of a bubble bursting. The heaven origin sword chi was completely shattered, but only a faint white mark appeared where the spirit-eating beast was hit by the sword chi, which quickly disappeared. What a strong defense! The screams quieted down and dissipated into nothingness. Chu Mu appeared at the entrance, opened up by the mining workers. The entrance was not big and only allowed one person to enter at a time. Yi Shiwen stood at the entrance and looked inside. Sure enough, many spirit stones were irregularly inlaid on the walls. Some were low-grade spirit stones, while some were middle-grade spirit stones. There were at least several thousand spirit stones. It was no wonder that those people would be blinded by greed. Chu Mu was very happy when he got a few low-grade spirit stones. If he saw these things at that time, he would be greedy too. Taking a step forward, he appeared inside. This place was like a large hall. It was about 8 meters tall and hundreds of square meters in area. There were marks left behind by some kind of sharp teeth on the walls. Chu Mu glanced around and his pupils shrank. There were a few corpses dozens of meters in front of him. Blood flowed and dyed the ground red. Those corpses were the ones who came here out of greed. Behind the corpses, there was a spirit-eating beast. It was sticking out its pink tongue and licking the blood on the ground as if it was nectar. Spirit-eating beast. These words flashed through Chu Mu's mind. The spirit-eating beast's body was silver gray. Its body was covered with protruding scales. Its overall appearance was very similar to an animal on Earth, a pangolin. Compared to a pangolin, this spirit-eating beast was obviously much bigger. It was comparable to a calf. Its limbs were short, and its claws were terrifyingly sharp. Its abdomen was almost close to the ground. The corpses had the same claw marks on them. Their skin and flesh were torn. Chu Mu discovered that this spirit-eater had no eyes, or perhaps he couldn't find where its eyes were. It looked very strange, regardless of whether this spirit-eater was a spirit-eater or not. Chu Mu frowned slightly as he watched it lick human blood in front of him. He unsheathed his wind-cutter sword, and a beam of Tianyuan sword chi shot out, carrying with it the power of tearing through the air. The distance of several dozen meters was covered in an instant. The heaven origin sword chi directly hit the body of the spirit-eating beast. It was like a wave of air hitting a rock, producing the sound of a bubble bursting. The heaven origin sword chi was completely shattered, but only a faint white mark appeared where the spirit-eating beast was hit by the sword chi, which quickly disappeared. What a strong defense! Chu Mu was shocked. Although sword chi was not the main attack of a swordsman, the Xiantian sword chi of the 7th rotation of Sky Origin, combined with a trace of ripping poetic conception, was extremely powerful. Even a piece of steel as thick as a finger would be torn apart. However, such an attack only left a faint mark on the body of the spirit-eating beast, and in less than 3 breaths of time, the mark disappeared. Chu Mu's attack attracted the attention of the spirit-eating beast. It looked up at Chu Mu, and Chu Mu suddenly felt as if he was being locked on. In the next breath, the spirit-eating beast opened its sharp mouth and spat out a milky white mass of air. This milky white mass of air rotated at high speed and produced a whistling sound. Its speed was extremely fast, and it shot out like a cannonball. Chu Mu dodged the attack of the mass of air and appeared beside the spirit-eating beast at an extremely fast speed. His sword carried with it the power of ripping poetic conception and slashed out. An obscure clanging sound rang out. Chu Mu's sword splashed out countless sparks, as if it had struck a mid-rank sword. There was also a rebounding force that caused the wind cutter sword to bounce up high. The milky white mass of air bombarded the wall and made a roaring explosion sound. Countless rocks and soil sputtered out. It was like a bullet hitting the air, making a poochie-poochie sound. Its power was extremely terrifying. Chu Mu's sword only split a small part of the hard protrusions on the back of the spirit-eating beast, and did not hurt its body at all. After removing the rebounding force, Chu Mu used the wind-shocking swordsmanship. His sword condensed, and its power became even more powerful. The spirit-eating beast was not slow either. It reacted quickly, and its long diamond-shaped protrusions swept out like a steel whip. It was earth-shattering, and the air exploded, causing Chu Mu's heart to skip a beat. This swing was not only fast, but also fierce. In terms of power, it was almost not inferior to the wind-shocking swordsmanship. Chu Mu's sword was even faster. The wind-shocking swordsmanship bombarded the body of the spirit-eating beast, and he quickly withdrew his sword and retreated, avoiding the attack of the spirit-eating beast's tail. Popping sounds rang out. This was the sound of the spirit-eating beast's tail bombarding the air. Countless sparks, mixed with some rocks, splashed out from its body. Even the wind-shocking swordsmanship can't hurt it. Chu Mu was shocked. In terms of attack power, the spirit-eating beast was roughly equivalent to a Qi transforming Deshang swordsman. However, its body's defensive strength was extremely terrifying. If one sword strike is not enough, then I'll use 10. If 10 is not enough, then I'll use 100. Chu Mu secretly said. He used the phantom steps, and 11 phantoms alternated. The spirit-eating beast's defensive strength was astonishing. Relatively speaking, its speed was its weakness. A series of clanking sounds rang out continuously. Chu Mu's figure circled around the spirit-eating beast, and he continuously attacked with his sword. In an instant, Chu Mu had attacked dozens of times and hundreds of times, landing on different parts of the spirit-eating beast's body. Although each sword strike could not do anything to the spirit-eating beast, Chu Mu's method was to find the spirit-eating beast's weakness. He believed that everything had a weakness. The key was whether he could find it or not. The spirit-eating beast seemed to give Chu Mu a very simple and complex feeling. With his eyesight, he could not easily find its weakness. The spirit-eating beast's tail swung out again, and the air once again issued a terrifying explosion sound. This time, Chu Mu dodged this attack. The wind-shocking swordsmanship's fury of the wind-shocking swordsmanship. Chu Mu directly used the most powerful move of the wind-shocking swordsmanship. He had integrated 30% of the tearing swordsmanship. The fury of the storm contained a terrifying sword edge. Its power was tyrannical to the extreme, and it left a dark, golden storm in the air. This sword strike immediately cut a large piece of the spirit-eating beast's silver-gray back. Before Chu Mu could rejoice, a strange scene appeared. The cut part of the spirit-eating beast's back was rapidly recovering. After 3 breaths, the whole spirit-eating beast was restored to its original state. It was not damaged at all. This time, Chu Mu was dumbfounded. Its defensive strength was ridiculously high. Even the penetrating swordsmanship could not penetrate it. With such a super-fast recovery speed, how could he fight? Everything in the mission has a weakness. If there is no weakness, it means that I have not found it yet. So, where is the weakness of this spirit-eating beast? Chu Mu pulled away from the spirit-eating beast and thought to himself, if I can use a top-grade sword, I may be able to break its defense and directly attack its insides. Unfortunately, Chu Mu had tried once before and still could not make the top-grade sword come out of its sheath. It seemed to be able to feel that Chu Mu's attack was very powerful. Surprisingly, the spirit-eating beast did not fight back. Instead, it crawled down and let its lower body stick close to the ground. Its movement immediately attracted Chumu's attention, and his eyes lit up. Many animals with hard shells on their backs often had weak points in their abdomens. Was this spirit-eating beast the same? Chumu stared at the spirit-eating beast's abdomen, but it was close to the ground and he could not see anything. He had to think of a way to turn the spirit-eating beast over or attack its abdomen. In a flash, he appeared beside the spirit-eating beast. Chumu stabbed his sword down, sticking close to the ground. However, it was blocked because the spirit-eating beast's hard shell had grown down a little and almost embedded into the ground. There was no gap for the sword to pierce through. The spirit-eating beast opened its mouth and spat out a milky white, swirling mass of air at Chumu. Chumu's sword split the mass of air with a tearing concept. Staring at the spirit-eating beast's open mouth, he suddenly remembered the words of one of the sword guards at the entrance of the mine. Spirit-eating beasts are strange beasts that eat spirit stones. Taking out a low-grade spirit stone, Chumu threw it at the spirit-eating beast. The spirit-eating beast quickly stretched out its pink tongue and rolled it directly into its mouth. Since it works. Chumu smiled and took out another low-grade spirit stone. He attached a strand of Tianyuan sword chi to the spirit stone and shot it at the spirit-eating beast. The Tianyuan sword chi quickly dissipated and could not be attached for a long time. Fortunately, the spirit-eating beast did not have much resistance to spirit stones. Its pink tongue once again rolled toward the spirit stone and was immediately pierced by the Tianyuan sword chi. The pain made the spirit-eating beast open its mouth and let out a sharp scream that almost pierced the eardrums. This scream was so sharp that Chumu could not help but shiver and feel his scalp go numb. Resisting this creepy feeling, Chumu stabbed out with his sword. The tearing concept power mixed with a strand of Tianyuan sword chi pierced through the sky at lightning speed and shot into the gap in the spirit-eating beast's open mouth. Destroying it from the inside, the spirit-eating beast was immediately hit hard. A mouthful of blood spurted out from its mouth, and the pain made it tremble. Chumu flashed and appeared next to the spirit-eating beast. He stabbed down with his sword and felt that the weight of the spirit-eating beast was like a small hill. The sword chi exploded. With a loud shout, the spirit-eating beast was lifted up by Chumu, exposing its belly. With a glance, Chumu caught sight of a fist-sized soft part of the spirit-eating beast's belly. He stabbed out with his sword. The tearing concept mixed with Tianyuan sword chi poured into it and destroyed it. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Chumu's figure flashed to avoid the splashing blood. The four limbs of the spirit-eating beast kept moving, leaving a series of terrible scratches on the ground. The pain in its belly was even more intense than the pain in its mouth, making it twitch again and again. A strong smell of blood spread out. Chumu found that the blood of the spirit-eating beast contained a trace of fragrance. After a while, the four limbs of the spirit-eating beast gradually stopped moving, leaving only a slight twitch. Its life aura was getting weaker and weaker. Finally, its four limbs stopped moving and became a little stiff. Chumu let out a sigh of relief. The spirit-eating beast was finally dead. It had taken him a lot of effort to kill it. He immediately walked towards the spirit-eating beast, planning to cut open its belly to see if there were any treasures. This kind of strange beast was so unusual. Maybe there were some treasures in its body. At the same time, there was a rush of footsteps coming from outside, quickly approaching. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijin. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 309. The hurried footsteps allowed Chumu to determine that there were as many as 11 people rushing over. Sure enough, silhouettes rushed in one after another. There were exactly 11 of them. Where is the spirit-eating beast? A shout was heard as soon as they appeared. Immediately, the 11 people looked at Chumu, then looked past Chumu to the dead spirit-eating beast. Chumu could feel the 11 people's eyes flash with an intense light. Their eyes were filled with greed. It's an adult spirit-eating beast. Great. The spirit-eating bead of an adult spirit-eating beast is priceless. You guys dissect the spirit-eating bead. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, shouted. Okay. Two of them immediately strode toward the spirit-eating beast. They completely ignored Chumu because their hearts were already occupied by the spirit-eating bead of the spirit-eating beast. They were blinded by greed. The spirit-eating bead was priceless. Just thinking about it made their hearts tremble. Chumu drew a line in the air with his finger like a sword. The Tianyuan sword chi slashed across the ground, leaving a straight mark. The sword chi was so cold that it shocked the two people who were approaching. They stopped and looked at Chumu with shock and anger. Who are you? The 11 people finally noticed Chumu, and the leader of the group yelled. Chumu immediately took out the mining area guardian sword token to let them see it clearly. The guardian sword token? Are you a new student of the Sword Mansion? These 11 people were a small team of swordsmen from the Spirit Stone mine. They were the team leader and 10 ordinary swordsmen. That's right, Chumu replied indifferently. So, it's the Lord from the Sword Mansion. The Sword Guard squad leader was startled at first, but then he rolled his eyes and said to Chumu with a smile on his face, My lord, this spirit eater often steals spirit stones and even kills the quarrymen. We haven't found a chance to deal with it, but I didn't expect to encounter it this time. My lord, let us handle the spirit-eating beast's corpse, lest my lord is covered in blood. Thank you for your kind intentions, but I can deal with it myself. Chumu faintly smiled when he heard this. The sword guards, subconsciously, took a step forward. They looked angry and anxious, as if they were about to attack. This was because the spirit-devouring beasts had spirit-devouring beads in their bodies. The spirit-devouring beads were rare treasures, good stuff. Even if he didn't use it himself, he could sell it for hundreds of thousands of low-grade spirit stones at the border city. Since you can handle it yourself, we won't disturb you any further. The Sword Guard squad leader smiled apologetically. He cupped his hands and signaled to the 10 ordinary sword guards with his eyes. My lord, if there's no need for us, we'll take our leave first. Chumu replied indifferently. After the sword guards retreated, Chumu turned around and stared at the spirit-eating beast's corpse. The blood had already flowed out. Spirit-devouring beads? Priceless? Chumu silently muttered to himself. He didn't have the slightest understanding of spirit-eating beasts, but the words of the sword guards just now had revealed a lot of information. Chumu turned the spirit-eating beast's corpse over. It was very heavy. He estimated that this spirit-eating beast weighed several thousand pounds. There was a hard shell on its abdomen. This shell was relatively flat and different from the shell on its back, but it was also very hard. In the middle of its abdomen, there was a fist-sized soft spot that was not covered by the shell. Chumu killed this spirit-eating beast by attacking this soft spot. Otherwise, he would have to retreat. The wind cutter sword stabbed into the soft spot on the abdomen again. The ripping concept, mixed with the heaven essence sword chi, was infused into the sword. He forcefully slashed downwards. There was a difficult and obscure sound as the shell on the abdomen was cut open inch by Chumu's wind cutter sword. Squad, are we going to let go of the spirit-eating beads so easily? It can be sold for at least 500,000 low-grade spirit stones. One of the 11 sword guards who left did not give up and spoke with a ruthless tone. 500,000 low-grade spirit stones. If the 11 of them split it, each of them could get 40 to 50,000 low-grade spirit stones. That was a huge sum of wealth. Although they were the sword guards of the spirit stone mine and were responsible for the security of the spirit stone mine, they would occasionally pocket some spirit stones. However, the spirit stones that they pocketed were all low-grade spirit stones. Furthermore, they would at most take a few hundred spirit stones in a year. If they took more, they would be discovered. Once they were discovered, the result would naturally be terrible. They would inevitably be punished. This spirit stone mine belonged to the Great Kuin Sword Mansion. Every year, there was a rule that stipulated the number of low-grade spirit stones and middle-grade spirit stones that had to be delivered to the Sword Mansion. The number set by the Sword Mansion seemed to coincidentally be close to the number of spirit stones that the spirit stone mine could extract every year. This was because before every spirit stone mine was mined, specialized exploration personnel would be sent to estimate the amount of spirit stones that could be mined every year. These personnel had an incomparable wealth of experience, combining all kinds of manpower and material resources to calculate the amount that could be mined every year. If the number of spirit stones delivered to the Sword Mansion was not enough, the Sword Mansion would send out personnel to investigate. They remembered that this had happened once before. The Sword Mansion's investigation found that many people had pocketed a lot of spirit stones. Those people were all killed on the spot to deter others. He is a new Sword Mansion student. He must be highly valued by the Sword Mansion. Once there is a conflict, if we don't kill him, he will definitely bear a grudge against us and take revenge on us in the future. However, if we kill him, the Sword Mansion will investigate and none of us will be able to escape responsibility. The squad leader of the Sword Guard said. He was very unwilling in his heart. Fortunately, he was not completely blinded by greed. Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. The Sword Guards were all distressed. If we can't get it, he can forget about getting it either. Go and patrol other places. I will have my own plans after we change shifts. The squad leader of the Sword Guards said with a cold smile. Chu Mu had already cut open the spirit-devouring beast's abdomen. In the end, he did not find anything. The strange thing was that the spirit-devouring beast did not have any internal organs. Finally, Chu Mu found a milky white pearl the size of a longan in the brain of the spirit-devouring beast. This pearl was not sticky with blood and was very clean. Furthermore, it emitted a faint, indescribable fragrance. When this fragrance entered the nose, it made one feel refreshed. The distracting thoughts in one's mind automatically receded. One felt refreshed, and one's entire body felt comfortable. All the fatigue was gone. Is this the so-called spirit-devouring pearl? Chu Mu stared at the milky white pearl between his fingers and said in a low voice. In addition to the refreshing fragrance, Chu Mu could also feel that the interior of this spirit-devouring pearl contained a pure and vigorous spirit energy fluctuation. The spirit energy fluctuation was several times stronger than the spirit energy fluctuation of a middle-grade spirit stone. In fact, it might be comparable to a high-grade spirit stone. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that the interior of this spirit-devouring pearl seemed to have given birth to a suction force. This suction force could affect a radius of 15 meters around its body. The spirit energy within the radius of 15 meters was quickly extracted and purified. Then, the spirit energy was constantly being absorbed into the spirit-devouring pearl. The spirit energy inside the spirit-devouring pearl became purer and more vigorous little by little. Chu Mu looked at the spirit-devouring pearl in his hand. Then he put it into the space bracelet. He secretly thought that he must look up the relevant ancient books. He must look up the relevant information about the spirit-devouring beast in order to understand it in detail. Looking around, Chu Mu did not find anything else. Then he took out his sword and started to mine the middle-grade spirit stones on the wall. There were too many low-grade spirit stones. It would take a lot of time to mine them one by one. Moreover, for the current Chu Mu, low-grade spirit stones could only be used in the sword comprehension room. When he was cultivating, he used middle-grade spirit stones. After a period of time, Chu Mu finally finished mining all the middle-grade spirit stones he could see. There were a total of 153 spirit stones. This was enough for him to cultivate for a long time. Sheathing his sword, Chu Mu strode out of the place. He followed the path he had walked before and kept going up. His memory was amazing. He did not need the road signs to find the right way back. "Sir, I heard that there were spirit-devouring beasts inside. You didn't encounter them, did you?" The sword guard who had warned Chu-Mu to run if he encountered a spirit-devouring beast saw Chu-Mu and said, "It's fine. By the way, do you know where I can read the ancient books about spirit-devouring beasts?" Chu-Mu asked with a smile, "I don't know about the ancient books about spirit-devouring beasts. However, if Sir only wants to know about spirit-devouring beasts, I have the relevant records here." As the sword guard spoke, he took out a thin book from his chest and handed it to Chu-Mu. "Thank you very much." Chu-Mu took it with a smile. "What is your name?" "Sir, my name is Zhou Ji." The sword guard's attitude was respectful. "Zhou Ji, I will remember it. After I finish reading it, I will return it to you." Chu-Mu nodded and said to the sword guard, who looked to be in his mid-20s, "There's no need, Your Excellency. I can recite the contents of this book backwards." Zhou Ji hurriedly said, feeling overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. "Good." Chu-Mu nodded and did not say anything else. He turned and left. "Zhou Ji, why are you so respectful to him? He is just a young boy who is not even 20 years old." Another sword guard who was close to 30 years old whispered, "Haha, this sir's cultivation is more powerful than mine. Moreover, he is from the Sword Mansion. His future achievements will definitely be great. It is only right to be respectful to him," Zhou Ji said with a chuckle. He looked a little silly. "Humph, he still has the nerve to say that he is from the Sword Mansion. He took your things and didn't even show any appreciation." The sword guard changed the topic and said indignantly, "Ha, it is nothing. It is just a handwritten copy. It has no value." Zhou Ji did not care at all. "Forget it. Your character is too old. Sooner or later, you will suffer." Chu-Mu walked back to his cave residence while opening the book that Zhou Ji gave him. It was a handwritten copy. Perhaps Zhou Ji had copied it himself, or perhaps someone else had copied it. The handwriting on it was neat and made people feel comfortable. Chu-Mu read it sentence by sentence. Gradually, he gained a clear understanding of spirit-devouring beasts. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 310. Inside the cave, Chu-Mu sat cross-legged on the bed, cultivating the 9 transformations of heaven origin. The bed was made of polished rock, and there was only a futon on it. There was no pillow or quilt. For a swordsman of the Qi transformation stage, the usual changes in temperature were no longer an issue for them. They could simply lie down and fall asleep. The spirit aura inside the cave was extremely pure, especially in the 15-meter radius around Chu-Mu. Not only was the spirit aura pure, it was also denser. It wasn't inferior to the heaven-rank sword tower in the Sword Mansion's inner palace. Why would there be such a change? Because Chu-Mu had the spirit-eating orb in his bosom. The spirit-eating orb's effect caused the spirit aura within 15 meters to become very abundant. Moreover, the spirit aura within 15 meters was even purer than the spirit aura outside of 15 meters. In such an environment, it was better than the Sword Mansion's heaven-level sword tower. Naturally, the effects of cultivation would be better. From the handwritten copy given by swordsman Zhou Ji, Chu-Mu made a more comprehensive understanding of the spirit-eating beast. Spirit-eater beasts were neither ferocious beasts nor demonic beasts. They were strange beasts that only appeared in spirit stone mines and were extremely rare. Spirit-eater beasts used spirit stones as food. When they ate the spirit stones would decompose and the pure spirit chi would be absorbed by them. The spirit chi would condense in their brain and eventually condense into a spirit-eater pearl. Once the spirit-devouring orb was formed, it meant that the spirit-devouring beast had entered adulthood. In the future, the spirit-devouring orb would continuously devour spirit stones, causing the spirit-devouring orb to grow bigger and bigger. The spirit chi inside would also become more and more abundant. Naturally, the strength of the spirit-devouring beast would also become stronger. As for the dregs of the spirit stones, they would be automatically expelled from the body and continuously condense. Over time, a layer of hard shell would be formed, becoming a very terrifying defensive power. Because the hard shell on the outside of its body, especially its back, was a collection of the dregs from the decomposed spirit stones, its weight would constantly increase. It felt as if it was carrying a mountain on its back. Although their strength increased as they grew stronger, the weight on their backs also increased. Thus, a balance was formed, and the speed of the spirit-eating beasts never increased. They were neither slow nor fast. The spirit-eating beast's main means of attack was its tail, which was filled with terrifying power. With a swing of its tail, even steel would crack. It was extremely terrifying. In addition, their sharp claws could easily tear through steel. Lastly, they could spit out spiritual chi bullets to attack. Only adult spirit-eating beasts could use the spirit-eating bead because the source of the spirit-eating bead was the spirit-eating bead. Using the spirit-eating bead would consume the pure spirit-eating bead's spirit-eating bead. Therefore, spirit-eating beasts rarely used the spirit-eating bead. Moreover, when the spirit-eater's shell was damaged, it would automatically replenish itself in a very short period of time. This was because the spirit-eater's body had an automatic storage function that could break down the dregs of the spirit stones it swallowed and store them for later use. Once these reserves were used up, the pure spirit-eating bead would need to use the pure spirit-eating bead to repair the damage to its shell. In other words, if one wanted to kill a spirit-eating beast, if one could not kill it in one blow or flip its body over like Chumu and directly attack the soft part of its abdomen, then one could only continuously consume the spirit-eating beast shell until it was completely used up and could not be repaired. Naturally, one could kill the spirit-eating beast. Most swordsmen needed to work together to kill a spirit-eating beast. Through attrition, the spirit-eating beast would eventually die. In the process, one or two, or even more swordsmen would be killed by the spirit-eating beast's counterattack. According to the records in the manuscript, it was said that once a spirit-eating beast became angry, it would become extremely terrifying and its strength would increase exponentially. As for how it became angry, there was no explanation. The manuscript also said that the spirit-eating beast's blood contained strands of pure spirit-eating chi and was fragrant and delicious. If a swordsman below the chi transformation stage consumed it, it could cleanse and nourish the body, making it more suitable for cultivation and making it easier to break through to the chi transformation stage in the future. However, the blood was completely useless to a chi transformation stage swordsman. Finally, there was a record of the spirit-eating bead. Adult spirit-eating beasts were also divided into different levels. Because the strength of a young spirit-eating beast was equivalent to a swordsman in the sword chi transformation stage, while an adult spirit-eating beast was equivalent to a swordsman in the chi transformation stage. A low-level adult spirit-eating beast's attack strength was equivalent to a chi transformation stage swordsman, and its defense strength could withstand the attacks of a chi transformation stage swordsman. A mid-level adult spirit-eating beast's attack strength was equivalent to a chi transformation stage swordsman, and its defense strength could withstand the attacks of a chi transformation Desheng swordsman. A high-level spirit-eating beast's attack strength was equivalent to a chi transformation Desheng swordsman, and its defense strength could withstand the attacks of a chi transformation stage swordsman. Above that were the super spirit-eating beasts, whose attack strength was equivalent to a chi transformation stage swordsman. It was said that their defense strength could withstand the attacks of a chi transformation stage swordsman. However, the most common were the low-level spirit-eating beasts. There were also a few mid-level spirit-eating beasts, but high-level spirit-eating beasts were extremely rare. As for the super spirit-eating beast, according to the manuscript, it had appeared once 30 years ago, and no one could do anything to it. At that time, it was said that even the sword guard commander had not been able to kill the super spirit-eating beast, and it had escaped into the depths of the earth. A low-level spirit-eating beast's spirit-eating bead contained spirit chi equivalent to a low-level spirit stone, and its purity was over 50%. A mid-level spirit-eating beast's spirit-eating bead contained spirit chi equivalent to a mid-level spirit stone, and its purity was over 50%. A high-level spirit-eating beast's spirit-eating bead contained spirit chi equivalent to a high-level spirit stone, and its purity was over 50%. These were not the main points. The main points were the two main effects of the spirit-eating bead. First, the spirit-eating bead was a collection of the pure spirit chi of the spirit-eating beast, and it would naturally emit a fragrance. This fragrance would clear one's mind of distracting thoughts and maintain the vigor of one's mind. It could also speed up the recovery of one's mind, and it was very helpful in entering a state of cultivation. Second, it was said that there was a whirlpool inside the spirit-eating bead, which would produce a suction force that would affect the spirit chi within a certain range. It would not only make the spirit chi pure, but also constantly converge. It would be very beneficial for people to be in such an environment. A low-level spirit-eating bead had a range of 5 meters. A mid-level spirit-eating bead had a range of 10 meters. A high-level spirit-eating bead had a range of 15 meters. And a high-level spirit-eating bead had a range of 20 meters. The spirit-eating beast that Chumu had killed was a rare high-level spirit-eating beast. Naturally, this spirit-eating bead was also a high-level spirit-eating bead. According to the handwritten record given by Zhou Ji, a young spirit-eating beast could be worth tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of low-level spirit-eating beads, while a low-level spirit-eating bead was worth between 300,000 and 500,000. A mid-level spirit-eating bead was worth nearly 1 million, and a high-level spirit-eating bead could even be sold for 2 million. The 9 revolutions of heavenly origin kept running, and the heavenly origin, sword chi, circulated in his meridians again and again. This kind of cultivation speed was much faster than in the sword mansion's heaven-level sword tower. After a long time, Chumu finished moving the spirit-eating bead. He exhaled, and the turbid chi shot out like a chi sword, piercing through the void and hitting the ground a dozen meters away. Suddenly, a fist-sized hole appeared on the ground. Amazing effect! Chumu was secretly surprised and took out the spirit-eating bead from his pocket. The effect of this spirit-eating bead was self-adjusting according to the environment. For example, if the spirit chi density in a place was 10 and the spirit chi purity was also 10, then within the effective range of a high-level spirit-eating bead, the spirit chi density would be 25 and the spirit chi purity would also be 25. If the spirit chi density was 20 and the spirit chi purity was 20, then within the effective range of a high-level spirit-eating bead, the spirit chi density would be 50 and the spirit chi purity would be 50. In other words, the higher the spirit chi density in a place, the greater the effect of the spirit-eating bead. Moreover, Chumu could feel that when he wasn't cultivating, the pure spirit aura that was being absorbed from all directions would pass through his body. This meant that his body was constantly being nourished by the pure spirit aura. Perhaps nothing could be seen in a short period of time, but after a long time, Chumu's body would definitely be better than the bodies of other swordsmen. Chumu decided that he would keep this high-level spirit-eating bead in his pocket in the future. This way, even if he was not cultivating, the pure spirit chi that was constantly gathering would constantly nourish his body. In the long run, the benefits would be great. Since the spirit-eating bead's effect is so amazing and its value is so high, that sword guard team will not be willing to give up so easily. Chumu suddenly thought of the sword guard team that was fighting over the spirit-eating beast in the spirit stone mine, and his eyes flashed. Since the spirit-eating bead is in my hands, no one can take it away. If they are blinded by greed, I will not be merciful. You didn't lie. In Yen Kaming's cave residence, he stood up and walked to the sword guard team leader with his hands behind his back. He stared into his eyes and said word by word, bringing great pressure to the sword guard team leader. I'm sure all 11 of us saw it. It was indeed an adult spirit-eating beast. This sword guard team leader was the one who wanted to cheat the spirit-eating beast from Chu Mu. He was one of the team under Yen Kaming. Very good. Now forget about this matter. Otherwise, it won't do any good. Yen Kaming's eyes flashed with a strange light, and his tone carried a bit of threat. Yes, I don't know anything. The sword guard team leader reacted quickly and hurriedly said. He knew that Yen Kaming was a ruthless person, and if he was not careful, he could be killed by him. Very good. Let your team members forget about this matter if they don't want to die. Yen Kaming said, Don't worry, Commander Yen. We'll forget about it completely. The team leader immediately promised. You may leave. Yen Kaming waved his hand. After the team leader left, he revealed a sinister smile. Chu Mu, you actually injured the most powerful team leader in my team. I was just thinking about how to deal with you. Spirit-eating bead, your end is here. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 311. Even if it's a low-level spiritual pearl, we must get it no matter if it's for our own use or for auction. Wait, the spiritual pearl is indeed a good treasure. But who knows if Yen will play any tricks? Second brother, I don't think Yen will dare to play any tricks. Otherwise, we, the 5 fierce of the desolate border, are not to be trifled with. Fourth brother, you're right. Although Yen is ruthless, he's also protective of his own people. According to the news I got this time, the most powerful squadron leader in his team, Zhao Hongji, was seriously injured by someone from the Sword Mansion. He's under the jurisdiction of the Sword Mansion, so he can't do it directly. That's why he came to us. Third brother, it's better to be safe than sorry. Since I'm not here, I have to be responsible for your safety. Don't worry, second brother. It's just a flower from the Sword Mansion. I can kill a bunch of them with one hand. The disciple from the Sword Residence is called Chu Mu. He's the disciple that just got ranked 100 on the Inner Palace Bronze sword ranking. His cultivation is at the peak of the large success stage of the Qi transforming stage. His true strength should be at the normal peak of the Qi transforming stage. With fourth brothers, near the peak of the Qi transforming stage, as long as you're careful, you can easily capture him. Second brother, third sister, fourth brother, I'm leaving. Wait for my good news. Chu Mu was walking in a valley about 50 miles away from the spiritual stone mine. This valley was called Tianhuang Valley. It was a very large valley and the only one in the Tianhuang mountain range. It was almost boundless. There were many fierce beasts and even powerful demonic beasts living in this valley. It was very dangerous. Usually it was also a place where swordsmen went to train. Although there were few resources in the Tianhuang mountain range and all kinds of spiritual herbs were not easy to find, there was a special product, Tianhuang root. This Tianhuang root was a middle grade or even upper grade spiritual herb. Once found, one could make a lot of money by selling it. Therefore, it attracted many swordsmen from the desolate border city. On his way to the Heaven Wasteland Valley, Chu Mu had encountered many swordsmen. All of them were in the Qi transformation realm. Most of them were in the initial Qi transformation realm or the initial Qi transformation realm. A few of them were in the Qi transformation Deshang realm. These swordsmen were often in groups of 3, or even 4 or 5. When they encountered Chu Mu, they only looked at him and did not deliberately approach or avoid him. Although Chu Mu looked young, the sword Qi fluctuation of Deshang at the peak of Qi transforming stage made them very afraid. Just thinking about it, they knew that such a young swordsman with such a cultivation of sword Qi was definitely not a loose swordsman. They would try not to provoke him if possible. The reason why Chu Mu came to the Everlasting Valley was because of Yen Kaming's request. According to Yen Kaming, the demon beasts in the Sky Wasteland Valley might go on a rampage and attack the human beings in the Spirit Stone Mine. They might even rush to the outskirts of the city. Every attack would cause great damage. Therefore, patrolling the Sky Wasteland Valley was a necessary task. This time, it was Zhao Hongji's turn to carry out the task. However, Zhao Hongji was seriously injured by Chu Mu and was still lying in bed. The others had their own tasks. Therefore, Yan Kaiming asked Chu Mu to carry out the task. Chu Mu knew the power of his sword. Zhao Hongji would definitely be injured. However, he would recover after resting for 2 or 3 days. Saying that he was seriously injured was just an excuse. However, Chu Mu still agreed to Yan Kaiming's request. First, since he was here to guard, patrolling was also his responsibility. Second, he wanted to see what Yan Kaiming was up to. He felt that if Yan Kaiming really wanted to do something to him, this might be an opportunity for him to take action. While waiting for Yan Kaiming's next move, Chu Mu patrolled the Everlasting Valley to check for the movement of the evil beasts. Occasionally, he would find some evil beasts. At the same time, a figure with a fierce aura was running on all fours like a hungry wolf. He was running on the Everlasting Mountain Range and was heading towards the Everlasting Valley. Along the way, many swordsmen felt the fierce aura coming from afar. Their faces turned pale, and they all dodged. They were afraid of the aura like a snake or a scorpion. 1 or 2 swordsmen who were slow in dodging were very unlucky. They were directly hit by the flying figure. It was as if a wolf's claw was clawing at the air. There was a terrible cold light intertwining. Immediately they flew to both sides. Blood spurted out. There were horrible scratches on their necks and chests. They died tragically. It's the 4th of the fierce 5 forest wolf. A few experienced swordsmen were 100% sure of the identity of the figure from the way he was running, the fierce aura, and the wounds of the unlucky swordsmen who were killed. They immediately let out a low cry. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably, and they felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. Who among those who made a living in Desolate Border didn't know of the infamous vicious of Desolate Border? Even an ordinary person without any cultivation would be able to speak of 2 or 3 of the most atrocious crimes of the vicious of Desolate Border. The fierce 5 has appeared. There will be a bloody disaster again. I wonder who it is this time. From far away, Chu Mu felt a dense and terrifying fiendish aura rapidly approach. This fiendish aura was like a vicious and violent wolf, choosing its prey to devour. Normal Qi transformation realm swordsmen would immediately go limp in front of this fiendish aura. Those with less courage might even directly wet their pants. Soon after, Chu Mu saw a wolf-like running figure stop about 100 meters away from him. It was a human wearing a wolf pelt. His body was robust, and the lines of muscles on his body gave people a feeling of explosiveness. This person looked to be in his 30s. His eyes were different from ordinary people. He didn't know if he was born with it or cultivated some kind of technique. They were somewhat green, like a hungry wolf, and made people's hair stand on end. His skin was bronze, and his chin was covered with a coarse beard, giving him a wild appearance. The terrifying fierce aura was like a fierce wolf. His entire body gave off a terrifying sense of danger. When he saw him, Chu Mu's pupils could not help but shrink. He was at the great circle of the Qi transformation realm, and no ordinary great circle of the Qi transformation realm. The aura he gave off was already close to the peak of the great circle of the Qi transformation realm. With such a cultivation of sword Qi and such a terrifying fierce aura, normal great circle of the Qi transformation realm would not be his opponent. Who knows how many people this person has killed with his hands? How much blood has he been stained with to have such a fierce aura? Chu Mu thought to himself. He had a feeling that this person was coming for him. The fierce man took out a piece of paper from his bosom and opened it. He stared at it, then looked around. Finally, his gaze fell on Chu Mu's face. Then he looked at the paper in his hand. "It's you." A beast-like roar came from his throat. The fierce man threw away the paper in his hand and pounced forward. His hands landed on the ground, and he used both hands and legs to support himself. Like a fierce wolf, he charged at Chu Mu with lightning speed. The terrifying fierce aura first turned into a fierce wolf and charged at Chu Mu. This formless fierce aura caused Chu Mu's hair to fly and his clothes to flutter. He really is coming for me. That piece of paper might be my portrait. Chu Mu thought to himself. His eyes were fixed on the fierce man who was charging at him with lightning speed. He faced the fierce aura head-on without the slightest fear. Great circle of the Qi transformation realm? So what? Lin Zhonglong's target is that young swordsman. Qi transforming Desheng's cultivation is at the peak. He is so young. He must be a disciple of some big clan or sword sect. He might even be a student of the great Kuin sword mansion. His future is limitless. Unfortunately, he has been targeted by the fierce men of the desolate border. Only death awaits him. What is going on? How did this young swordsman provoke the desolate border's 5 fierce? Who knows? Anyway, he has been targeted by the desolate border's 5 fierce. Only death awaits him. Not to mention, the difference between his cultivation and Lin Zhonglong's is too great. Just as everyone was talking, Lin Zhonglong was less than 30 meters away from Chu Mu. No matter who his opponent was or why he had come, Chu Mu felt danger from this person. He felt a killing intent. Therefore, he drew his sword and slashed out 2 intersecting sword qi. These 2 sword qi contained a trace of lacerating concept. They directly tore the air apart, causing the sword qi to shoot out even faster. So fast, the swordsmen in the distance were shocked. They were shocked by the speed of Chu Mu's sword and the speed of the sword qi. Lin Zhonglong was also slightly shocked, but he did not take it seriously. His body swayed as he ran, dodging the 2 sword qi. His speed increased explosively, and he rushed towards Chu Mu like a shooting star breaking through the moon. In the next breath, Forest Wolf's 2 hands bent into claws and fiercely clawed at Chu Mu, who was a few meters away. The sound of cloth ripping rang out, and 10 extremely terrifying cold glints attacked, leaving clear marks in the air. With a slash of the wind cutter sword, Chu Mu destroyed the 10 cold lights. At the same time, he felt a strong, rebounding force coming towards him. He hurriedly dispelled it. At the same time, Lin Zhonglong pulled out the wolf fang short sword at his waist and slashed out in a cross. It was like a wolf's fang that broke through everything. Fast, extremely fast. Ruthless, extremely ruthless. Fierce, deadly fierce. This kind of attack was concise, direct, swift, and deadly. It almost eliminated all other unnecessary movements. It was close to returning to the basics of killing. There was only one purpose: to kill the target. It was the first time Chu Mu had met such a terrifying opponent since he came to this world. How many people and how many creatures did one have to kill to be able to cultivate such a skill? This sword art was in pursuit of the technique of directly killing the target. For no reason, Chu Mu's heart surged with excitement. As his pupils contracted, a terrifying cold light shot out, like 2 swords piercing into the void. The wind cutter sword pierced and cut like lightning. It was so fast that it was as if it was only one sword attack. The ear-piercing sound of collision was heard. Lin Zhonglong's simple, direct, and deadly attack was immediately broken by Chu Mu. At the same time, Chu Mu twisted his sword. A dark sword light pierced through the air, leaving behind a straight line, piercing towards Lin Zhonglong. It was as fast and deadly as lightning. Lin Zhonglong did not retreat. Instead, he rushed towards Chu Mu's sword light. The 2 wolf fang short swords shot out a terrifying sword light, turning into 2 long swords. One was defending, and the other was piercing towards Chu Mu. It was as if he was going to die together with Chu Mu. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 312. Die together? No, Lin Zhonglong was not an idiot. He would not do this kind of unprofitable business, and Chu Mu was not an idiot either. He would not do such a stupid thing. This was not only a battle of sword arts, but also a battle of aura. Whoever was worried and dodged first would have a weaker aura, and Chu Mu knew this very well. With a flick of his wrist, the wind cutter sword vibrated at a high speed. Zhan Tian's force was used to push the opponent's short sword away, and the broken short sword bounced towards Lin Zhonglong's right hand according to Chu Mu's intention. If Lin Zhonglong did not stop it, it would affect his attack. Lin Zhonglong was very experienced in fighting. His left hand did not resist but pushed forward, and the sword light on the two short swords shot out towards Chu Mu's eyes. Chu Mu's head shook, and he took advantage of the slight time difference between the two sword lights to dodge. The wind cutter sword slashed horizontally, and the sky origin sword chi that contained the ripping mentality tore through the air, turning into a 5-meter-long sword chi. Lin Zhonglong waved his hands quickly, and the two wolf-tooth short swords crisscrossed, directly shattering Chu Mu's sword chi. The sword chi surged, and the mentality of gold was integrated into the sword chi, forming a sword net that rushed towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu raised his eyelids, and his eyes shone brightly. The wind cutter sword pierced out, hitting the weakest part of the sword net and breaking it. Countless sword chi shot out in all directions, like fireworks. The forest wolf's speed was as fast as lightning. He circled around Chu Mu and attacked. The two wolf fang short swords were full of killing intent as they crisscrossed and slashed towards Chu Mu. The two wolf fang short swords seemed to come alive in the forest wolf's hands, as if they were the fangs of a fierce wolf. Chu Mu did not move, and let Lin Zhonglong continue to attack. He blocked one sword after another and counterattacked, using the Zhan Tian force from time to time. Once again, Lin Zhonglong retreated with a swoosh, causing a commotion among the crowd. Forest Wolf actually retreated. Unbelievable. This young swordsman is unbelievable. He can actually make Forest Wolf retreat. In their impression, whether they had seen it with their own eyes or heard it from others, once Forest Wolf attacked, he would never retreat unless his opponent was killed by him. Therefore, when they saw that Forest Wolf had retreated without killing or even injuring his opponent, they all widened their eyes and rubbed them hard, thinking that they were hallucinating. Kid, once I, Lin Zhonglong, attack, I never retreat. This is the first time I've retreated. You should feel honored. Lin Zhonglong grinned, and the green light in his eyes became even more obvious. It was very scary. His teeth were also very sharp, as if he was going to bite into flesh. You are indeed a student of the Sword Mansion's bronze sword ranking. Your swordsmanship is indeed extraordinary. I acknowledge you. I will not kill you this time, but you have to obediently hand over the spirit-devouring pearl. Spirit-devouring pearl. It's actually a spirit-devouring pearl. That young swordsman actually has a spirit-devouring pearl. No wonder I felt that the spirit chi around him was a bit different when we passed by each other. No wonder he was targeted by Lin Zhonglong because of the spirit-devouring pearl. The best thing to do is to hand over the spirit-devouring pearl. Perhaps he can save his life, using the spirit-devouring pearl to lure him out. Chu Mu muttered to himself and smiled. I do have a spirit-devouring orb, but I don't give my things away casually. If that's the case, then you don't know what's good for you. I will take your life as well. Lin Zhonglong did not want to waste any more words and attacked again. This time he did not fight Chu Mu with his swordsmanship like before. Instead, he crossed his two wolf-tooth short swords in front of him, like a ferocious wolf opening its mouth. Sword chi surged out, and the power of gold mentality exploded as he performed an ancient sword skill. A wolf howl was heard, and the swordsmen who were a few hundred meters away shuddered as their hair stood on end. Then Lin Zhonglong seemed to have disappeared and was replaced by a huge black wolf head. The wolf head's eyes were red, and its fangs were protruding out of its open mouth. They were shining with a golden light and were extremely sharp. The terrifying evil qi surged out like a tide, making the power of this skill even more terrifying. It's Lin Zhonglang's famous ancient sword skill, the wolf slaughter sword skill. I recognize that skill. It's called the ferocious wolf bite. It's the second skill of the wolf slaughter sword skill. What a powerful ancient sword skill. The aura made Chu Mu slightly surprised. The power of this ancient sword skill was probably no less than his wind sword skill. It even contained 53% of the gold mentality, which was cultivated to Desheng's level. Wolf slaughter sword skill. I'll kill you first. Chu Mu muttered to himself. It was the wind sword skill, the wind sword skill. A violent wind blew. As the sword stabbed out, 30% of the ripping mentality was integrated into it. The power of 30% of the ripping mentality was equivalent to 60% of the gold mentality. It was extremely terrifying and much stronger than Lin Zhonglang's 50% gold mentality. The power of the wind sword skill was no less than the ferocious wolf bite. The power of the ripping mentality was far stronger than the gold mentality. This sword tore the black wolf head apart and stabbed towards Lin Zhonglang, who had revealed his true body. Lin Zhonglang was shocked. He never expected that his ferocious wolf bite would be broken apart by a single sword. Moreover, the terrifying power of concept contained in his opponent's sword caused his hair to stand on end. He felt as if his protective sword energy was about to be torn apart. Even his skin and flesh felt as if they were being torn apart. Lin Zhonglang's body suddenly dived downwards, as if he had transformed into a wolf. He quickly jumped to the side and dodged Chu Mu's sword. With a swoosh, Chu Mu changed his move. It was the wind sword skill, the wind fury. One sword, wind fury. With a rustling sound, the sand and stones on the ground were blown up and gathered together. The flying sand and stones made the sword move even more powerful. The spectating swordsmen were all dumbfounded. Not only did they see Lin Zhonglang take the initiative to retreat in a battle for the first time, but it was also the first time they saw Lin Zhonglang's ancient sword technique, wolf's bite, being broken by a sword head-on, forcing him to dodge quickly. Most importantly, Lin Zhonglang's opponent was a young swordsman whose sword qi cultivation was one level lower than his. The murderous intent in Lin Zhonglang's heart was unimaginable. His sword technique had been broken by someone he could easily crush, and he had even been forced to retreat. He had even been chased by his opponent. While running, Forest Wolf suddenly let out a strange howl. His body suddenly rushed up into the air, and while doing a somersault in the air, he lowered his head to avoid the wrath of the wind. At the same time, he clasped his two short swords together and started spinning. It's the third move of the Wolf Slayer sword art, Wolf Whirling Kill. Because of their great reputation, the ancient sword techniques of the Desolate Border Ferocious Five also became well known. Very powerful indeed. Thinking to himself, Chu Mu swung his sword up. 32% of the tearing mentality had been infused into the wind-cutting sword. The Heaven Yuan sword qi exploded and condensed. The Wrath of the Wind had the smallest attacking area, and because it had been trained to completion, it was also the easiest to control. All of the power had been condensed on the tip of the sword. The sword sliced through the air, and Yi Chen's whole body shot up into the air. This sword attack was aimed at the sharpest part of the wolf spinning kill, which was also the weakest part. The two attacks clashed. The sharp points clashed, and a horrifying, ear-piercing sound exploded. The air was filled with a ringing sound, and the horrifying sword qi spread out, shattering the sand and stones on the ground into dust. The tearing mentality and the gold mentality were fighting against each other. After a second, the tearing mentality had torn the gold mentality apart. Yi Chen had broken Lin Zhonglang's sword attack with one sword attack, and then continued to stab at Lin Zhonglang. Lin Zhonglang's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly separated his hands and waved his two short swords, attacking Chu Mu's wind-cutting sword. Chu Mu's wrist vibrated, and the Zhantian power shook Lin Zhonglang's short swords away 3 times. Chu Mu, who had shot up into the air, and Lin Zhonglang, who was falling down, were about to pass by each other. However, another sword appeared in Chu Mu's left hand all of a sudden, and he waved it out. The tearing mentality had been condensed on the gold sword, and it had reached 30%. Even steel would be as fragile as tofu under this sword attack. Lin Zhonglang's protective sword Qi was as good as nothing. It was too sudden. Not only was it out of everyone's expectation, it was also out of Lin Zhonglang's expectation. He was not prepared for it at all. Fast, it was way too fast. It was Chu Mu's deliberate attack. The extreme speed of the sword made it impossible for people to catch the trajectory of the gold sword. Yan Kaming, you tricked me. Lin Zhonglang's eyes flashed with a touch of despair. In this state, he could not use any of his skills. He could only feel his protective sword Qi being easily torn apart. In a trance, he seemed to see a touch of dark gold passing through his body. For a moment, Lin Zhonglang seemed to see the smiling faces of countless people he had killed. They were all reaching out to grab him, grabbing his body and dragging his soul into hell. The gold sword cut through Lin Zhonglang's waist without any resistance. A drop of blood flew out with the sword, shining in a strange light in the air and sprinkling in all directions. The forest wolf's body was split into 2 as it fell. Immediately, blood spurted out like a fountain and poured down like a torrential downpour. It hit the barren ground and quickly seeped into the dried-up ground, turning it dark red. With 2 consecutive thuds, the 2 halves of Lin Zhonglang's body rolled down. His 2 eyes were wide open, staring at the sky as if they were questioning something. They were full of unwillingness, anger, and a trace of regret. Chu Mu also fell to the ground, landing beside Lin Zhonglang's body. Dead, dead. The swordsmen in the distance were all stuttering. Lin Zhonglang is dead. It's over, it's over. The Savage 5 are going to go crazy. Go, go, go. Let's leave this place quickly. The swordsmen's faces were all deathly pale, looking panicked. They hurriedly left, all of them in a sorry state. They were extremely scared. They were scared that they would be affected because they watched. They were scared that the other 4 of the Savage 5 would go crazy after hearing the news of Lin Zhonglang's death. With their habits, they might even start a massacre. And this young swordsman who killed Lin Zhonglang was dead for sure. He was definitely dead. The Savage 5 would definitely not let him go. They would definitely kill him by 1,000 cuts. He would die an incomparably miserable death. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 313. One-Eyed Dragon. Tiger in the Mountain. Snake in the Cave. Wolf in the Forest. Crane in the Cloud. Vicious 5 of the Desolate Border. Chu Mu quickly rushed back to the mining area as he recalled all the information he knew about the Vicious 5. This information was obtained from a few swordsmen who were weaker than him on his way back. He directly captured them and interrogated them. The Vicious 5 of the Desolate Border lived in the Desolate Border region. They came of age 10 years ago, and their methods were cruel and ruthless. They were merciless and merciless. They had committed many sect extermination cases, as well as many unreasonable massacres. They had become the most fearsome villains in the Desolate Border region. In the Desolate Border city, there were people who put out a bounty. As long as one killed the Desolate Border 5, they would be able to obtain their family heirlooms and other treasures. In the end, before the Desolate Border 5 were killed, they were exterminated by the Desolate Border 5. The Vicious 5 of the Desolate Border region were all extremely powerful and united. Their residences were extremely secretive as well. Apart from themselves, almost no one else knew about it. In short, The vicious five of the desolate border region were terrifying existences that made children not dare to cry at night. This time, no matter what the reason was, the fourth of the vicious five, Wolf in the Forest, wanted to kill Chu Mu. It seemed like it was for Chu Mu's spirit-devouring orb, but in the end, he was killed by Chu Mu instead. This news would definitely spread quickly and eventually fall into the ears of the other vicious five of the desolate border region. They would then seek revenge on Chu Mu. At that time, he would definitely not be able to avoid a bloody battle with these villains. Before the bloody battle, Chu Mu had to take care of one thing first: Yen Kaming. The moment Wolf in the Forest was killed by Chu Mu, he shouted, "Yen Kaming, you tricked me!" With the personality of a villain, shouting something like this was most likely to drag Yen Kaming down with him. Combining everything that had happened in the past and the piece of paper that Lin Zhonglong had seen, Chu Mu was 90% sure that Yen Kaming was behind all of this. Yen Kaming was the one who wanted his life. Furthermore, he and Yen Kaming did not know each other and had no enmity with each other. Why would he want to kill him? There must be some other reason behind this. Perhaps someone wanted him dead and couldn't do it themselves. Coincidentally, he was here, so they asked Yen Kaming to do it. But who was it? Chu Mu couldn't think of anything. Since he couldn't think of it, there was no need to think about it. It was a waste of brain cells. He just needed to attack Yen Kaming and force him to say it. If he didn't say it, he would just kill him. The news of the appearance and death of the wolves in the 5 ferocious forests of the desolate border quickly spread from the mouths of the onlooking swordsmen. The speed at which the news spread was beyond imagination. It was even faster than Chu Mu's traveling speed. What? The wolf in the forest was killed by Chu Mu? Chu Mu isn't injured. Inside the cave, Yen Kaming suddenly stood up. His pupils were trembling, and the corners of his eyes were twitching. His face was filled with intense shock. He couldn't accept this news for a moment. After a long while, Yen Kaming sat down again. His fingers lightly clasped the back of the chair. A rhythmic sound spread out. His brows were tightly knitted, as if they were locked and couldn't be unlocked. He was very clear about the strength of the wolf in the 5 ferocious forests of the desolate border, because he had fought with him before. Although both sides had held back in that battle, Yen Kaming also knew that even if he used all his trump cards, he might be able to kill the wolf in the forest. However, the price would be serious injuries, or even death. Since Chu Mu could kill the wolf in the forest without being injured, didn't that mean that Chu Mu's true strength was even higher and stronger than his Yen Kaming's? But his sword qi cultivation was only at the peak of the qi transforming Desheng. Once he broke through to the qi transforming consummation, wouldn't he be even more terrifying? Thinking of this, Yen Kaming felt his scalp tingle. He couldn't help but shudder. He felt some regret in his heart. Wasn't it too unwise to offend such a person with such a terrifying talent for the sake of benefits? I don't care anymore. Since I've already made my move, then Chu Mu must die. Otherwise, when he comes back to his senses and suspects me, then it will be very troublesome. Yen Kaming's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. His face was ferocious as the corners of his mouth curled up. Moreover, now that he has killed the wolf in the forest, the other 4 of the 5 ferocious forests of the desolate border will definitely not let him go. Especially the boss, One-Eyed Dragon, who is already at the peak of the qi transforming consummation 5 years ago. I haven't heard from him for a long time now. I wonder if he has broken through to the qi high realm. Just as Yen Kaming was thinking to himself, a sword guard ran in. "Commander Yen, Chu Mu wants to see you." The sword guard said directly, "Oh, let him in." Yen Kaming waved his hand. His expression returned to normal, but his mind was spinning. What was Chu Mu's goal? Did he discover something? At this moment, Chu Mu strode in. The sword guard retreated and left. Only Chu Mu and Yen Kaming were left in the cave. Brother Chu, sorry to trouble you. How is the situation in the Sky Wasteland Valley? Did anything strange happen?" Yan Kaming immediately stood up and walked down. He had a bright and gentle smile on his face as he asked with concern. Nothing strange happened. Chu Mu replied calmly as he stared at Yan Kaming. Yan Kaming's expression was normal, as if he didn't feel guilty at all. But I encountered something strange. Yan Kaming's heart skipped a beat, but the cunning old fox didn't show any abnormal expression. Instead, he showed a look of concern and curiosity. "Oh, what strange thing did you encounter?" "There was a fierce man, nicknamed Wolf, in the woods. I don't know where he got a portrait of me." Chu Mu took out a piece of paper from his space bracelet. It was a portrait. Yan Kaming's pupils shrank because he remembered that Chu Mu had a space bracelet. This thing was very precious, and he didn't have it. In the whole Spirit Stone mining area, only the commander and the 2 deputy commanders had it. "Yan Kaming, you asked me to patrol the Sky Wasteland Valley, and I was found by Wolf in the woods. I believe that I have no enmity with you. Why do you want me to die?" Chu Mu said directly, saving him the trouble of beating around the bush. Yan Kaming was startled. He didn't expect that Chu Mu would ask him so directly. He couldn't use all the answers he had prepared. But Yan Kaming's reaction was very fast. An innocent look flashed across his face. "Brother Chu, this is a coincidence, absolutely a coincidence. Just as you said, I have no enmity with you. I have no reason to harm you. Benefits can move people's hearts, but you need to be alive to take them." Chu Mu sighed. His voice was very soft. Before, he was 90% sure, but now, seeing Yan Kaming's reaction, Chu Mu was 120% sure. Yan Kaming didn't reveal any flaws because he was very cunning. But Chu Mu's sword observation technique was not to be trifled with. Plus, his powerful soul force was far stronger than ordinary people. Chu Mu could feel the change in Yan Kaming's heartbeat in an instant. If he didn't have a guilty conscience, when he heard Chu Mu's words, he would only be surprised and even angry. But the change in Yan Kaming's heartbeat was obviously caused by his guilty conscience. What? Yan Kaming didn't hear Chu Mu's words clearly because he was a little distracted. He was thinking about how to deal with Chu Mu. Wolf in the woods said that he wants you to go down and accompany him. Chu Mu said in a low voice. His voice was like a breeze blowing into Yan Kaming's ears. At the same time, he unsheathed his wind-beheading sword and slashed towards Yan Kaming unexpectedly. Yan Kaming was very experienced in fighting. Years of fighting had made his intuition better than others. The moment Chu Mu unsheathed his sword, his heart couldn't help but jump, and he felt his hair stand on end. Retreating in the blink of an eye, Chu Mu's sword shot out a heaven origin sword chi that contained the power of ripping mentality. It instantly tore through the air and attacked Yan Kaming. The speed was too fast, and Yan Kaming couldn't dodge it. He didn't even have time to unsheath his sword. He could only wave his hands continuously, shooting out Xiantian sword chi that contained the power of fire mentality. The sword chi kept colliding with each other and exploding. Countless sounds were heard. After destroying Chu Mu's sword chi, Yan Kaming immediately pulled out his own sword. It was a fire element upper rank sword. The temperature in the cave instantly rose. The sword in Yan Kaming's hand was burning with flames, and the air was boiling. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish," Yan Kaming shouted. At this time, he couldn't care about anything else. Chu Mu wanted to kill him, so he had to fight back. Otherwise, he would be killed by Chu Mu. As for what punishment he would receive after killing Chu Mu, it didn't matter anymore. Saving his own life was more important. With a slash of his sword, a huge flame burned fiercely and slashed towards Chu Mu. Fire mentality, 53%. Chu Mu instantly judged Yan Kaming's level of fire mentality. Although Yan Kaming's sword chi cultivation was obviously better than his, but in terms of the purity of sword chi, Chu Mu was not below Yan Kaming. Using the phantom steps, layers of phantoms alternated, dodging Yen Kaming's sword and appearing beside him. The Wind Cutter's sword was raised from bottom to top, as if it was going to cut the waterfall. Yen Kaming's face slightly changed. He turned around and slashed towards Chu Mu's waist. Both sides attacked dozens of times in an instant. Every attack was aimed at the other's vital points, trying to kill him in one blow. This guy's swordsmanship is powerful. Yen Kaming's eyes darkened as he pulled away from Chu Mu. He continuously slashed out dozens of sword chi that contained the power of fire mentality as he thought to himself. In a battle between swordsmen, they usually wouldn't directly use powerful sword moves, unless they were extremely confident that they could kill the other party in one move, making it impossible for the other party to dodge or resist. Otherwise, when a powerful sword move was used, there would often be an unavoidable flaw, because they didn't know the other party's background. Although a powerful sword move was very powerful, it also consumed a lot of energy. If they rashly used it without understanding the other party, the situation would often be disadvantageous if the other party dodged it. Once the other party grasped that flaw, the following battle would become more passive. Therefore, a battle between swordsmen would start with a clash of swordsmanship. If they could kill the other party with their swordsmanship, it would naturally be better. Otherwise, it would be a process of figuring out the other party's background and fighting style, as well as looking for a fatal flaw. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 314. A series of ear-piercing, clanging sounds were heard, and countless sparks flew. The temperature in the cave increased rapidly, and normal people would not be able to withstand it. Even a raw egg would be cooked in a short period of time. Waves of sword chi splashed in all directions, and the walls and floor of the cave were all covered with crisscrossing marks. It was a shocking sight. The chairs in Yen Kaming's cave were all carved out of rocks and were very hard. But now, under the two sword chi, they were all cut into pieces and scattered on the ground. The battle between Chu Mu and Yen Kaming was not a friendly match, but a life and death battle. The two fought from one side to the other, and their figures surrounded the entire cave. Yen Kaming's strength was indeed slightly stronger than Lin Zonling's. For a moment, Chu Mu was unable to take him down. But after this battle, Chu Mu had already understood Yen Kaming's fighting style and all kinds of details. Next, it was time to end Yen Kaming's life. Yen Kaming was the first to perform the ancient sword art, Burning Earth. The sword swept across, and in an instant, the ground seemed to be covered in a layer of fire, burning fiercely. Those flames were all formed by the concept of fire mixed with fire elemental Xiantian, sword chi in a special way of the ancient sword art, scorching fire sword art. They possessed a terrifying power. Chu Mu leaped into the air and pointed his sword at Yen Kaming. A tearing concept was mixed with Heaven Yuan sword chi and shot towards Yen Kaming. Then Chu Mu's sword flashed, and he performed the shocking wind sword art and slashed towards Yen Kaming's head. Burning fire sword art, burning sky. Raging flames soar to the sky was the second move of the ardent fire sword art, which was also the follow-up move of Burning Earth. The raging flames on the ground were instantly drawn by the sword in Yen Kaming's hand, turning into a huge pillar of flames. This pillar of flames seemed to be made up of countless fire sword chis. It shot straight towards Chu Mu, who was in the sky, with a loud rumbling sound. The Wind Cutter sword slashed downwards. The 32% ripping sword intent was not held back at all. The Heavenly Origin sword chi exploded. A dark golden light flowed around the sword, cutting the flame pillar apart. The power of the tearing concept was too terrifying. Yen Kaming was shocked. He couldn't imagine that his raging inferno swordsmanship would be broken apart by Chu Mu's sword. The Wind Cutter sword slashed out in the air, with a dark golden luster flowing past, leaving a thin trace in the air. More than a dozen fire sword chis were all defeated by Chu Mu's sword. With the help of the collision between this sword and the fire sword Qi, Chu Mu's figure made a turn in the air, and like a swallow returning, he slashed towards Yan Keiming at a faster speed. It was the result of observing Huangfu Sangyue's swallow return. This sword was faster and more powerful, and it displayed the burning wind sword art. Yan Keiming's scalp tingled and his face turned pale. He only felt that Chu Mu's sword was impeccable in terms of power, speed, and angle. He couldn't block it. Fire-type sword aura surged from both of his feet and slammed into the ground. With a rumbling sound, Yan Keiming's entire body instantly flew backwards. Chu Mu's sword attack was accompanied by a violent gale, as if a sword had come from the west. Yan Keiming had rich experience in fighting. He knew that if he retreated and Chu Mu chased after him, he would eventually be caught up by Chu Mu. So he hurriedly waved dozens of fire sword Qis and bombarded Chu Mu densely, trying to stop Chu Mu. All the fire sword Qis were blown by the violent gale around Chu Mu and turned into nothingness in an instant. Damn it! Yan Keiming cursed secretly, but he couldn't display the burning fire swordsmanship, because his burning fire swordsmanship was special. It was an ancient swordsmanship that could only be displayed from the first move, which was a bit like a combo. That was to say, if he wanted to display the third move, he had to display the first and second moves first. The advantage of this was that the power of the next move would be doubled and become very terrifying. However, this kind of ancient swordsmanship had both advantages and disadvantages, and that was time. He had to find the right opportunity to display the moves one by one during the battle. Usually, when the third move was displayed, the power would be very terrifying and could easily kill the opponent. However, the key problem was that he needed time. In the current situation, he didn't have any time to display it. He could only keep retreating, disregarding the consumption of his sword Qi and the burden on his body. Otherwise, he would be killed by Chu Mu in a single move. Chu Mu's speed was extremely fast. The speed of the shocking wind swordsmanship was originally fast, but after fusing with the tearing concept, it became even faster. The violent gale blew over and closed in on Yan Keiming. Unfortunately, at this time, a sword guard entered the cave. The cave was sealed, so the outside couldn't hear what was happening inside. This sword guard was a small team leader. As soon as he entered, he saw Yan Keiming retreating with a miserable expression, and Chu Mu's sword was closing in on him with a murderous aura. You actually dare to attack Commander Yan. This sword guard squad leader didn't care about anything else. In short, Yan Keiming was his superior, and when his superior was in trouble, he naturally couldn't stand by and do nothing. He immediately drew his sword and used the killing move of a super-level sword art. It turned into a roaring gale and rushed towards Chu Mu. This sword came from the side. Although it was dispersed by the raging wind swordsmanship when it hit Chu Mu's body, it still made Chu Mu's speed slow down slightly. Yan Keiming seized the opportunity and rushed out of the cave. He secretly praised this squad leader. Not bad. Get lost. Chu Mu frowned. Originally, this sword could kill Yan Keiming. Even if it didn't kill him, it could at least injure him. Once he was injured and his strength decreased, it wouldn't be difficult to kill him later. He didn't expect such an accident to happen. Moreover, this sword guard squad leader actually dared to kill him with a sword. Chu Mu casually swung his sword horizontally. A terrifying sword Qi shot out and sent the sword guard squad leader flying into the wall. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Rushing out of the cave, Yan Keiming was already hundreds of meters away. Chu Mu immediately deepened his mentality and increased his speed to chase after him. Master Wuya, save me. Feeling the killing intent behind him, Yan Keiming was scared out of his wits. He already knew that he wasn't Chu Mu's opponent. He didn't care about his face anymore and started to beg for help. At this moment, face didn't matter anymore. As long as he could survive, everything would be fine. Die! A low roar resounded in his ears. Yan Kaming's face was extremely pale, and his pupils dilated. Chu Mu had already inconceivably approached him. A sword was coming towards him, and death filled his heart. It's not certain who will die. Yan Kaming was ruthless. He turned around and slashed towards Chu Mu. Fire element Xiantian sword qi gushed out of his body like a volcanic eruption. Even if he died, he wanted to drag Chu Mu down with him. A dark golden light flashed in Chu Mu's eyes. The sharp golden sword in his left hand was about to appear. A majestic aura descended from the sky. This terrifying aura was like the suppression of an invisible mountain. It actually made Chu Mu and Yan Kaming's movements stop for a moment. Immediately after, two extremely pure and powerful Xiantian sword qi shot out from the void. It was unbelievably fast. One shot onto Yan Kaming's sword, and the other shot onto Chu Mu's wind-cutter sword. With two clangs, the sword in Yan Kaming's hand flew out of his hand. His hand trembled in pain. Chu Mu also felt pain in his hand. His beheading wind sword almost flew out of his hand. He opened his palm, and the beheading wind sword rolled in his hand to dissipate the powerful force and held it again. The beheading wind sword pierced out once again, aiming for Yan Kaming's neck. The sudden change made Yan Kaming think that he was saved. Just as he relaxed, Chu Mu attacked again. Despair filled his heart. No, Yan Kaming cried out. In the next moment, he felt his body being grabbed by an invisible hand. He retreated faster than lightning, causing Chu Mu's attack to miss. Then a shadow flashed and pointed towards Chu Mu's wind-cutter sword. Chu Mu felt the finger grow bigger and bigger in front of his eyes. It was unstoppable. He quickly retracted his sword and retreated. Luckily, the owner of the finger only wanted to stop him and didn't chase after him. However, his goal of killing Yan Kaming was not achieved. Master Wu Ya. Yan Kaming stood on the side, his expression changing. He was grateful that he had survived a disaster. Chu Mu looked from 10 meters away. He saw a tall and strong middle-aged man wearing black light armor and a red cloak. The aura on his body was extremely strong. It was like the turbulent sea, causing people to be intimidated. Qi Hai Realm. Chu Mu's pupils shrank. These 3 words flashed through his mind. This person was one of the 2 vice commanders of the Spirit Stone Mine sword guards. Wu Ya. What's going on? Wu Ya frowned. He glanced at Yan Kaming and Chu Mu and shouted. His voice was as heavy as a mountain. It made people feel suffocated and difficult to breathe. What a terrifying aura. Chu Mu was secretly shocked. He couldn't tell what level of Qi Hai Realm Wu Ya was at, but he was shocked by this terrifying aura. After thinking about it carefully, Chu Mu realized that he was definitely not a match for Wu Ya. It would be difficult for him to block one of his attacks, let alone fight back. Maybe only when his sword Qi reached the peak of the Qi transformation realm and his understanding of the concept of ripping became more profound would he be able to fight him. No matter what, since this vice commander of the Qi Hai realm, Wu Ya, appeared, it seemed that the plan to kill Yan Kaming had failed. If he wanted to kill Yan Kaming in the future, it would be even more difficult. However, no matter how difficult it was, Chu Mu would not give up. Since Yan Kaming wanted to kill him, Chu Mu had no reason to let such an enemy go. Master Wu Ya, this is what happened. This person is called Chu Mu. He is a new student on the bronze sword ranking of the Sword Mansion. He came here to perform his duty as a guard. Yan Kaming hurriedly told the story. But other than the first part of what he said was true, the second part was changed. It was as if he was an innocent person who didn't know anything. And Chu Mu was crazy enough to kill him. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijin. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 315. Deputy Commander Wu Ya's abode was twice as big as Yan Kaming's abode. Wu Ya sat at the head of the table, while Yan Kaming and Chu Mu sat on the chairs on his left and right. Wu Ye did not say a word, his gaze slowly sweeping between Yan Keiming and Chu Mu. His gaze was like a tangible light, and whoever it landed on would feel pressured. Every time, Yan Keiming's body would involuntarily tremble, but Chu Mu didn't move at all. His expression didn't change. This caused Wu Ye to secretly admire him, but his face was solemn. Previously, Yan Keiming had already explained the cause and effect of the incident. Because of the commotion, many sword guards came to watch, so Wu Ye let Chu Mu and Yan Keiming into his abode. The two deputy commanders took turns to be on duty, and this time it was Wu Ye's turn. Normally, Wu Ye would cultivate in his abode and only appear when there was a major incident. This time, he was able to save Yan Keiming because he felt that his breathing was not smooth after cultivating, so he left the abode to take a walk outside to relieve himself. Coincidentally, he heard Yan Keiming's cry for help and quickly rushed over, just in time to see Chu Mu about to kill Yan Keiming. There was no time to understand what had happened, and Wu Ye had always been more cautious, so he intercepted Chu Mu to save Yan Keiming before understanding. Wu Ye was his subordinate. There was a sword guard commander in the Spirit Stone mining area, but this commander usually cultivated in seclusion and rarely took care of things, so the two deputy commanders took turns to manage things. As a result, after a long time, it was inevitable that some forces would form. The two deputy commanders formed their own faction, and the four large team leaders happened to be biased towards one of the deputy commanders. Yan Keiming happened to be one of the large team leaders who was biased towards Wu Ye. Of course, he had to protect his own people, even though Wu Ye subconsciously felt that Yan Keiming was not telling the truth. The reason was simple. Wu Ye was directly sent by the great Kuin sword mansion to guard, so he was very clear about the strength of the disciples on the bronze sword ranking. Back then, he did not even have the qualifications to be on the bronze sword ranking, and could only look up to it. Therefore, although he was surprised that Chu Mu could not let go of his sword after being hit by his sword chi, he did not pay too much attention to it. In his mind, people who could be ranked on the bronze sword ranking often had their own unique points. Most importantly, although the sword mansion encouraged students to rely on themselves, if an ordinary student was killed in a conflict outside, the sword mansion would not pursue the matter for revenge. However, if it was a student on the bronze sword list, it would be different. They would be highly valued by the sword mansion. Every one of them was a treasure, especially when he was sent out on a mission by the sword house. If something happened to him, the sword house would definitely investigate to the end. Not to mention a chi-high swordsman like him. He was as insignificant as an ant to the sword house. Moreover, during the time when Yan Keiming was explaining, Chu Mu did not say a word. His expression did not change, and he looked as if nothing had happened. This extraordinary bearing was enough to make people admire him. Such a person, Wu Ye would never be able to associate Chu Mu with a deranged, killing devil. Then there was only one conclusion. Yan Keiming was lying. If it had been another deputy commander or commander, Yan Keiming would have been in big trouble this time. However, it was Wu Ye who was helpless. Chu Mu, what do you have to say about what Yan Keiming said? Wu Ye finally spoke, making Yan Keiming let out a sigh of relief. That kind of pressure was too unbearable. There is nothing to explain, Chu Mu said indifferently and looked at Yan Keiming. Tell me, who told you to take my life? Chu Mu, don't think that just because you are a student on the bronze sword list, you can do whatever you want. With Wu Ye present, Yan Keiming's tone became stiff. I've already said it very clearly. Everything was just a coincidence, Who knows where the picture of wolf in the forest came from? Maybe you've offended someone before. Yan Keiming's fierce defense made Wu Ye even more convinced that this matter was directly related to him. However, Yan Keiming was his subordinate, one of the two captains. Once he died, he couldn't find a second person to replace him in a short period of time. Chu Mu, do you have any evidence to prove that Yan Keiming was behind this? Wu Ye turned to look at Chu Mu and asked. No, Chu Mu said indifferently. Indeed, he didn't have any direct evidence, but as long as he knew it was fine. Although he couldn't kill him now, it didn't mean that he couldn't kill him in the future. Since there is no direct evidence to prove that this matter is related to Yen Kaming, then let it be for now. I will continue to investigate and give you an explanation when the time comes. Wu Ye said. He didn't give Chu Mu any chance to refute and continued. The Savage Five of the Desolate Border are too famous, and each one of them is very cunning. This time you killed Wolf in the forest, so I'm afraid the other four won't let you go. If they want to make a move on you, you can inform me and I will deal with them. Thank you, Chu Mu said indifferently. He stood up and clasped his hands. I'll take my leave first. Although Chu Mu was young, he wasn't stupid at all. He understood the meaning of Wu Ye's words very clearly. It was nothing more than him siding with Yen Kaming and turning this matter into a small matter, and a small matter into nothing. If there was no direct evidence, and if there was an explanation after the investigation, it was just an excuse. Once Chu Mu really believed it, then he could only wait and wait and wait until there was no result from the investigation. Originally, Wu Ye didn't look like a cunning person, and was the kind of person who could be befriended. Unfortunately, he was siding with Yen Kaming, and Yen Kaming wanted to kill Chu Mu, so he was Chu Mu's enemy. A person who was siding with his enemy, no matter how good he was, Chu Mu wouldn't have any interaction with him. Even if there was an unavoidable conflict, Chu Mu wouldn't show any mercy. Wu Ye didn't ask him to stay, nor did he need to. When he walked out of Wu Ye's cave, it was already late at night. Chu Mu looked at the dark sky, then walked back to his cave. After 2 intense battles today, he needed to go back and think carefully. As for Yen Kaming's life, if he couldn't take it now, he could take it in the future. As long as there was a chance. Chu Mu definitely wouldn't let him go. Senior Wu Ye, this fellow relied on the fact that he came from the sword residence, and didn't put you in his eyes. The moment Chu Mu left, Yen Kaming rolled his eyes and quickly stood up to speak, fanning the flames. He was very worried that Chu Mu would continue to seek revenge. So no matter what, he couldn't let Chu Mu live. At least, he couldn't let Chu Mu continue to stay here. Yen Kaming, this time I saved your life. Wu Ye interrupted Yen Kaming and said coldly, Yes, Lord Wu Ye. This time, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be standing here talking right now. Yen Kaming immediately said. He didn't understand the meaning behind Wu Ye's words and continued. But this guy thinks he's arrogant just because he's a disciple of the Sword Mansion's bronze sword ranking. He didn't put you in his eyes at all. No matter what, we can't let him go. Oh, not letting him go? Then what do you think we should do? Kill him? Wu Ye smiled coldly and asked in return. This. Yen Kaming was stunned and didn't know what to say. Could it be that he really wanted to kill Chu Mu? Not realistic at all. Yen Kaming, I think you know better than me what's going on. Chu Mu also knows very well. Don't be blinded by temporary benefits. There are some people you can't offend. Wu Ye said sternly. Lord Wu Ye, I don't know what you're talking about. Yen Kaming's heart skipped a beat and he continued to play dumb. It doesn't matter if you know or not. This matter ends here. Be more restrained in the future. Wu Ye warned. Okay, you can leave now. Then, Lord Wu Ye, I'll take my leave first. Yen Kaming cupped his hands and left. Looking at Yen Kaming's back, Wu Ye thought to himself that it was a pity that he couldn't get Chu Mu's spirit-devouring pearl. Wu Ye didn't care anymore. He believed that this matter should be over now, and Chu Mu shouldn't pursue it anymore. Yen Kaming also understood the meaning behind his words. As long as he wasn't an idiot, he would know to stop here. Otherwise, he could save him once, but he couldn't save him a second time. Yen Kaming quickly left Wu Ye's abode and returned to his own abode. Unfortunately, I have no fate with the supreme grade sword. Yen Kaming clenched his fists and was inwardly furious. However, as long as the other 4 of the vicious 5 make a move, Chu Mu will definitely die. At that time, I can say that it was my arrangement, and I can still get the supreme grade sword. What a pity about the spirit-devouring pearl. Only, Senior Wu, you said that if the desolate border's 5 evils came to find Chu-Mu, I could ask him for help. This way, Chu-Mu wouldn't die. I have to think of a way to make Senior Wu Ye unable to help Chu-Mu. This way, Chu-Mu would be killed by the desolate border's 5 evils. Yan Keiming's eyes flashed with a sinister glint as he constantly schemed. Moreover, he quickly put his plan into action. In the dark night, a figure silently disappeared into the night. He quickly left the mining area and headed towards the depths of the desolate mountain range. Second brother, don't stop me. I must kill this Chu-Mu to avenge fourth brother. The fifth of the vicious 5, Yun Jong-hee, roared furiously. I also want to avenge fourth brother and kill that Chu-Mu with 1,000 cuts. However, now is not the time. Let's wait for third brother to come back. Shan Jong-hoo stopped Yun Jong-hee, not letting him leave. Lin Zhonglong was slightly stronger than Yun Jong-hee, but even he died under Chu-Mu's sword. If Yun Jong-hee went, he most likely wouldn't be able to survive. I'm back. A figure flashed past and appeared in front of the two. According to the information from Yen, that damn Chu-Mu is now under Wu Ye's protection. If we act rashly, we might attract Wu Ye's attention. With his cultivation, it's easy for him to kill us. Therefore, we can only wait for an opportunity. Wait for that Chu guy to leave the mining area. How long do we have to wait? Yun Jong-hee angrily said. He finally gave up on the idea of revenge. Unfortunately, Wu Ye's cultivation was too strong. Even if the 3 of them worked together, they would be easily killed. There will definitely be an opportunity. Third brother Snake said. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 3:16. Things were very strange. Everything returned to silence as if nothing had happened. Rumble! A sound like muffled thunder sounded. One could feel the tremors of the mountain under their feet, which disturbed Chu-Mu, who was practicing swordsmanship. After a few breaths, it returned to silence. Similar vibrations had occurred several times recently, but after checking, they didn't find any special reason. If there was something different about this period of time, other than the tremors, there seemed to be some abnormalities in the Tianhuang Valley. Demonic beasts seemed to appear more frequently than usual, and the demonic beasts were also more violent than before. This led to the death rate of the swordsmen who entered the Tianhuang Valley to search for the Tianhuang root and other spiritual herbs to increase. The swordsmen in the mining area were more vigilant than before, because they felt that this might be a sign that the demonic beasts in the Tianhuang Valley were about to riot. Although it felt different from before, it was necessary to be more vigilant. Since Wu Ye intervened, Chu-Mu spent most of his time in his cave residence. As for his meals and such, there would naturally be people who would deliver them to the outside of the cave residence. Yan Keiming had also thought of poisoning the food, but in the end he gave up the idea. Not to mention whether it would work. Once the matter of poisoning appeared, Lord Wu Ye would definitely suspect him. At that time, even if he wanted to protect him, it would not be easy. This time, Yan Keiming learned his lesson. He did not do anything, and everything was as usual. He just waited for the other 4 of the fierce 5 to kill Chu-Mu. After that, he would only care about the benefits. The days of waiting were unbearable. Unfortunately, Wu Ye had been cultivating in his cave residence. Because of the inexplicable tremors, he would often come out to patrol. Therefore, the fierce 5 could not find a chance to attack. In comparison, Chu-Mu's life was more casual. Although Yan Keiming had to be killed, Chu-Mu wouldn't keep him in his heart all the time. This was because Yan Keiming was just a small fry in Chu-Mu's eyes. The most important thing was to increase his own strength. As long as his strength increased, everything else would be easy. If he had the ability to contend against a Qi high swordsman, then Wu Ye would not have been able to stop him, and Yan Kaming would have already died under his sword. The days of cultivation were the most leisurely and passed by very quickly. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. With the help of the high-grade spirit-eating bead and the middle-grade spiritual stone, Chu Mu's sword qi was becoming more and more profound and pure. The 7th rotation of the 9 turns of sky origin was about to be completed. For a cultivation method like the 9 transformations of heavenly origin, the purer the spiritual energy, the faster the advancement. Within this month, other than cultivating the 9 transformations of heavenly origin, he also cultivated the 3rd layer of the sword qi protection secret technique. Chu Mu also cultivated everything a swordsman should know, including the basic sword techniques and techniques to see, hear, and touch the sword. Seeing the sword had already been cultivated to perfection. Hearing the sword had also been cultivated to Deshang, but the touch of the sword had not made any progress. No matter how hard Chu Mu cultivated, he still couldn't make any progress. He couldn't rush it. After that, he cultivated the shocking wind sword art. The rest was all comprehending and comprehending. He comprehended the concept of tearing and the sword force, as well as how to fuse them together. In addition, he also had to comprehend the 13 forms of the golden edge and the sky splitting sword strike. Occasionally, Chu Mu would take some time to walk around the spiritual stone mine. If he saw a middle-grade spiritual stone, he would dig it out and put it into his spatial bracelet. Unfortunately, after a month, he had entered the mine several times, but he didn't encounter any spirit-eating beasts. They were indeed very rare. After finishing another cultivation of the 9 transformations of heavenly origin, Chu Mu exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi and said to himself, "According to this progress, it is estimated that I can break through Deshang and enter perfection in half a year. By then, my sword qi will be purer, and my overall strength will be improved significantly. It has been a month since I came here. There are only 5 months left. I have to find a suitable opportunity to kill Yan Kaming in this period of time." He got out of bed, pulled out his sword, and cultivated his swordsmanship again. Another day passed. The swordsmen in the spiritual stone mine also strengthened their patrols. Suddenly there was a huge roar. It should be the roar of a terrifying, demonic beast. It was like thunder exploding in the sky, rolling and shaking in all directions. It was very frightening. Even some of the cave's seals couldn't stop it. For example, the seal on Chu Mu's cave was also penetrated by the roar. Although it was weakened a lot, it still reached Chu Mu's ears. "What is that sound?" Chu Mu opened his eyes and shot out a sharp light. He muttered to himself and quickly got up. From this weakened roar, he could hear a domineering aura of supremacy in the heavens and the earth. It was an aura that no human or beast could match or resist. It was like a king. Not only did Chu Mu hear it, but Wu Ye also heard it. Because the roar was too terrifying, the seals could only weaken it to a certain extent, but they couldn't isolate it. This sound. Wu Ye's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He recalled a certain legend in his mind, but he couldn't be sure, because the legend was too shocking. In a flash, Wu Ye rushed out of the cave and looked in the direction of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. According to his judgment, the domineering roar came from the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Aside from Wu Ye, many others rushed out of their caves and looked in the direction of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Not only the swordsmen in the spiritual stone mine, but many people in other places were also alarmed. Because the roar was too loud, even the people in the border city could hear it. Some of the weaker swordsmen couldn't withstand the roar because they were in the Heaven Wasteland mountain range and fainted. This sound. Within a certain hidden cave in the Heaven Desolate mountain range, the 2nd brother, 3rd brother, and 5th brother of the Desolate Border's vicious 5 were all stunned. The expression of the most knowledgeable 3rd brother changed greatly. His red lips opened wide as he cried out in a low voice, "Could the legend be true?" Someone whispered and sighed. Many figures, leaped out of the desolate city. Some of them even used a secret technique to grow a pair of wings on their backs and fly out of the desolate city. They quickly headed for the desolate valley in the desolate mountain range. When the domineering roar quieted down, the rumbling sound came again. It was like an earthquake of magnitude 7 or 8. The entire heaven wasteland mountain range was shaking. Chu Mu thought for a while, then used his movement technique and quickly flew towards the heaven wasteland valley. Apart from Chu Mu, there were also many platoon leaders of the swordsmen. Even the vice commander Wu Ye rushed out like an arrow. At the same time, another figure flew out from another cave and stood side by side with Wu Ye. 50 miles was not far for Chu Mu. Before long, Chu Mu was near the heaven wasteland valley. He stood at the edge and looked down. The heaven wasteland valley was hundreds of thousands of meters deep. The heaven wasteland mountain range was still shaking, and it was getting more and more intense. The rumbling sound was constantly heard, as if the mountain was about to collapse. A terrifying and invisible aura came out of the heaven wasteland valley. This aura was huge, desolate, and ancient, and contained vicissitudes of life. Under the spreading of this aura, people's hearts would tremble. They could not help but feel a sense of desolation and vicissitudes of life, as if it had been hundreds of years. With an earth-shattering sound, a dense and substantial heaven wasteland aura suddenly gushed out of the heaven wasteland valley. It was hundreds of times more powerful than a high-pressure water gun. It shot up to the sky, and in everyone's eyes, it was a giant gray chi pillar. The giant column of air shot straight up, reaching a height of several thousand meters, as if it was going to shatter the sky. The white clouds were all scattered into nothingness. Wisps of heavenly desolation aura spread out. Chu Mu unconsciously absorbed a wisp into his body and immediately noticed that this wisp of heavenly desolation aura actually took the initiative to merge into his flesh, causing his body to strengthen bit by bit. This was a good thing. Chu Mu quickly concentrated and took the initiative to touch the heaven wasteland aura around him. Unfortunately, the 9 rotation points of heaven origin could not absorb this strange aura. Chu Mu could not absorb it actively and could only absorb it passively. Roar. Another earth-shattering roar sounded. Hearing it at such a close distance, Chu Mu only felt that this terrible sound went into his ears and went straight to his brain. Waves of dizziness swept over him, and the chi and blood in his body were shaking violently. A large amount of heaven wasteland aura had integrated into his flesh and blood. Because of his powerful soul power, Chu Mu withstood the dizziness. However, the other chi transforming stage swordsmen all fainted and fell to the ground. Only those who had reached the exceptional stage of chi transforming stage, or even the chi si realm, could barely withstand the dizziness, but their bodies were also shaking. In the next moment, a huge figure shot up from the heaven wasteland valley. It tore apart the heaven wasteland aura pillar and appeared in everyone's sight. It was a giant beast. Its body was incomparably huge, and its length was at least 1,000 meters. Its skin was yellowish-brown, and there were traces of cracks on its skin. It was like the dry land, and it emitted an endless barren aura. This giant beast had a pair of incomparably huge yellow-brown fleshy wings that were also covered in cracks. Its appearance was 50% similar to a male lion on Earth, but it looked more majestic and powerful than a lion. There was a natural domineering aura between its eyebrows. Gulp! Some of the swordsmen who were still conscious swallowed their saliva. Such a giant beast, and the aura it emitted, made them feel as deep as the sea. They were all shocked and terrified. It's... Some of them stuttered and pointed at the giant beast, unable to say a word. It's the heaven wasteland. Giant beast of heaven wasteland. The legend is true. There really is a giant beast of heaven wasteland in the heaven wasteland mountains. Giant beast of heaven wasteland. Chu Mu stared at the huge, invisible figure thousands of meters in the sky and muttered to himself. He was extremely shocked. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 317. The Heaven Wasteland Beast, which was standing still at a height of several thousand meters, lowered its head and looked down. Its huge eyes slowly swept across the crowd. Its gaze seemed to have materialized and landed on the crowd. Immediately, everyone felt pressured, under the assault of a terrifying pressure. Even their souls were trembling. Even the Chi High Realm swordsmen did not dare to move under this gaze. They could only feel that their bodies were being suppressed by an invisible force. It was too strong and too terrifying. They were sure that if this terrifying giant beast wanted to kill them, no matter if they fought back or ran away, it would be useless. They would be killed by this giant beast in an instant. Luckily, the sky wasteland giant beast only glanced at them for a moment before it looked up at the sky. The wings on its back suddenly spread out and made a loud sound. The huge wings seemed to have covered the sky, giving the crowd a gloomy and oppressive feeling. Soon after, the sky wasteland giant beast flapped its wings and created a terrifying storm. It roared and spread in all directions. The sky wasteland giant beast then flew up into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only then did the crowd hear a terrifying explosion. It was as if countless thunderbolts were exploding in the sky. Sonic boom. This was a speed that even the Chi High Realm swordsmen could not achieve. It required one's own speed to be faster than the speed of sound. Only when the body of the swordsman was strengthened to a certain extent and their cultivation level was increased to a certain extent could they achieve this. After about 10 breaths of time, the crowd started to realize what had happened. Without saying anything, they all used their movement skills and quickly ran towards the bottom of the Sky Wasteland Valley. The legendary Sky Wasteland giant beast had appeared and left the Sky Wasteland Valley. Then, would there be any treasures in the Sky Wasteland Valley? At this moment, even the Chi High Realm swordsmen were tempted. Chu Mu thought for a moment and also used his movement skill to run towards the Sky Wasteland Valley. He did not know what the Sky Wasteland giant beast was, but the place where the giant beast was hiding was really exciting. The cultivation of a swordsman required all kinds of resources. Otherwise, it would take a lot of time to reach a high level by relying on oneself. It might even take a lot of time. As humans, they were best at using tools and resources to improve themselves. Sky Desolate Valley's range was extremely large. After a few hundred swordsmen entered Sky Desolate Valley, they disappeared like stones sinking into the ocean. Looking around, Chu Mu couldn't see any other swordsmen. He could only see many broken rocks and seemingly withered trees. The Heaven Wasteland Valley looked like it had been renovated. Pits and cracks could be seen everywhere. As they walked, Chu Mu's sharp eyes discovered a yellowish-brown root, part of which was sticking out of the ground. It's the Heavenly Desolate root. In a flash, he appeared in front of the yellow-brown root. The Heavenly Desolate root was a specialty of the Heavenly Desolate mountain range. It was very difficult to find it anywhere else. The lowest grade Heavenly Desolate root was at least a mid-grade spirit herb. Its main use was to refine pills. This pill had a great effect on both internal and external injuries. Chu Mu did not know about the Heavenly Desolate root before. It was only after living here for a month that he gradually learned about it. The Heavenly Desolate root was divided according to its segments. A segment was about the length of a finger. A 3-segment yellow-brown Heavenly Desolate root was the lowest grade Heavenly Desolate root. It was a mid-grade spirit herb. A 2-segment Heavenly Desolate root was yellow in color and was a high-grade spirit herb. A 1-segment Heavenly Desolate root was dark brown in color and was a supreme grade spirit herb. A 3-segment Heavenly Desolate root was easy to find, but a 2-segment Heavenly Desolate root was hard to find. As for a 1-segment Heavenly Desolate root, it was even rarer. What Chumu saw now was a two-segment, high-grade, heavenly desolate root. It could be sold for at least 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. For an ordinary sword warrior, 1,000 low-grade spirit stones was a huge sum of money. If Chumu had not won first place in the Sword Art King competition and received 200,000 low-grade spirit stones as a reward, he would not have so many spirit stones to use. Casually storing the heavenly desolate root into his spatial bracelet, Chumu continued to move forward. His sharp eyes scanned the surroundings and found any valuable items. Not long after, Chumu found a three-segment, heavenly desolate root. It was a middle-grade spirit herb and was worth 100 low-grade spirit stones. The heavenly desolate valley was indeed very big. Chumu had walked for a long time, but it still seemed to be boundless. If one did not enter it, one would not know the mysteries within. Oh, a segment of heavenly desolate root. Chumu reached out his hand, and the dark brown heavenly desolate root immediately fell into his hand. A segment of heavenly desolate root was a supreme grade spirit herb and was worth 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. If it was refined into an elixir, its value would increase by several times. In this heavenly desolate valley, Chumu had earned tens of thousands of low-grade spirit stones. At this time, 3 figures appeared in front of him. They were rapidly approaching with a fierce aura that was shocking, like a tidal wave. When Chumu discovered the 3 figures also discovered Chumu at the same time. The other party's aura was shocking and surging, as if it wanted to crush Chumu. Facing their aura, Chumu did not move and his expression did not change. He also clearly saw the appearance of the 3 figures. There were 2 men and 1 woman. One was a burly man who gave people the feeling of a tiger coming down from the mountain. One was a beautiful woman with an enchanting figure, and the other was a thin, middle-aged man. It's him, he's Chumu. The moment the alluring and beautiful woman saw Chumu's appearance, she immediately let out a sharp cry and increased her speed. When the other 2 heard the alluring and beautiful woman scream, their expressions changed. Their already dense, fiendish aura became even more terrifying, surging towards Chumu like a tide. As the large man flew, he had the ruthlessness of a fierce tiger descending the mountain. It was as if he was accompanied by waves of roars that were extremely terrifying. As for the skinny middle-aged man, he flung his arms and, like a pair of wings, soared into the air. Like a bird, he charged towards Chumu. Meanwhile, the alluring and beautiful woman's waist twisted and turned like a water snake as she slithered over at an extremely fast speed. In a flash, the 3 figures surrounded Chumu from the left, the middle, and the right side of the ground, forming a killing move. It was as if Chumu had become the prey that fell into the trap. The 5 fierce of the desolate border. Chumu immediately recognized the identity of the other party. This kind of aura seemed to only exist in the 5 fierce of the desolate border. Moreover, it should be the 2nd brother tiger in the mountain, the 3rd brother snake in the cave, and the 5th brother crane in the cloud. As for the eldest brother one-eyed dragon, it seemed that he did not appear here. In any case, Chumu had already killed the 4th brother wolf in the forest. He had already formed an irreconcilable enmity with the 5 fierce of the desolate border. It was inevitable that one of them would die. He had encountered them sooner or later, but he still encountered them now. In a flash, Chumu judged the cultivation of the 3 people from their auras. The burly man, the 2nd brother tiger in the mountain, was at the peak of the Chi transformation realm. The beautiful woman, the 3rd brother snake in the cave, was also at the peak of the Chi transformation realm, comparable to the tiger in the mountain. As for the thin, middle-aged man, the 5th brother crane in the cloud, he was slightly weaker and was close to the peak of the Chi transformation realm. The 3 of them were all fierce and extremely vicious people. Their hands were stained with countless amounts of blood, and their fighting experience was incomparably rich. Once they joined forces, Chumu immediately felt as if he had fallen into some kind of predicament. No matter what, he could not dodge. It was as if the sky and the earth were completely covered. The incomparably sharp killing intent assaulted Chumu, making his hair stand on end. Tiger in the mountain, Snake in the cave, and Crane in the cloud had obviously brought out their true strength and joined forces to kill Chumu in one blow. Although they wanted to catch Chumu and torture him to death, there are currently many experts in the Sky Wasteland Valley. There were also many Chi-Hai realm swordsmen. If they were to bump into a Chi-Hai realm swordsman, it would be troublesome. Chumu squinted his eyes slightly and unsheathed the wind-cutter sword. He split the sword into three, and 3 streaks of Tianyuan sword chi that contained the power of tearing sword conception were shot out. However, they were not aimed at the 3 fierce beasts, but at the side of the 3 fierce beasts. The 3 fierce beasts' faces suddenly changed. They felt that their joint forces had suddenly been broken. Then Chumu leaped into the air and stabbed forward with his sword towards Crane in the cloud, who was diving down from the sky. Crane in the cloud's body was extremely agile. He turned in the air and not only dodged Chumu's sword, he also used 2 short swords to counterattack. The snake's body in the cave twisted as if it was a beautiful but extremely poisonous viper. It rushed up from the bottom, and a viper-like sword glowed with a green brilliance as it stabbed towards Chumu's back. Tiger in the mountain roared. He held the big sword with both of his hands and swung it forward. A terrifying sword chi surged out. The sword seemed to have turned into a huge tiger. It opened its mouth and bit towards Chumu's upper body. The 3 of them joined forces to surround Bufang again. It had to be said that the 3 of them had great teamwork. However, no matter how good their teamwork was, Chumu's eyesight was amazing. He once again found a flaw. He swung his sword and attacked Crane in the cave, forcing Crane in the cloud to withdraw his sword to block the attack. However, he realized that Chumu's wind-cutter sword was chopping towards Snake in the cave. Apprehension. Crane in the cloud was enraged. He immediately performed the first move of the Cloud Crane sword art. A sharp and ear-piercing screech was heard. As the wind howled, Crane in the Cloud's sword seemed to have turned into a crane that was about to land on the ground. Its sharp claws were cold. Snake out of the cave! Snake in the cave twisted its body and strangely dodged Chumu's sword attack. It performed the first move of the venomous snake sword art. The snake-shaped sword in its hand was like a poisonous snake that had locked onto its prey. It was as fast as lightning, and it was impossible to defend against. This guy is dead for sure. Tiger in the mountain revealed a sinister smile. Even he would not be able to escape death under the attacks of his 3rd brother and 5th brother. Facing this killing move, Chumu's expression did not change. A cold light flashed through his eyes. The wind-cutter sword seemed to have turned into countless sword shadows and slashed out from above and below. The sword chi was like a storm. After a violent collision, Chumu used the momentum to rush up into the sky. He dodged Crane in the cave and Snake in the cave's attacks. Looking down from above, he unleashed a sword attack that shocked the wind. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 318. Windshock sword art. Windshock created a sharp gust of wind. It tore through the air and stabbed toward Yunzhong. Yunzhong felt as if his protective sword energy was about to be torn apart. It was extremely frightening. The snake in the cave hastily used the second move of its venomous snake sword art. It transformed into a viper-like illusory sword and attacked Chumu again. Tiger in the mountains saw that it was difficult to deal with, so he no longer held back. He raised his sword and chopped down. Tiger in the sky, Tiger in the storm sword art. If Chumu insisted on killing Yunzhong with this move, he would definitely be hit by Snake in the cave and Tiger in the mountain. If that happened, he would die. Chumu made a feint with his sword. Even Windshock was a feint. He flew to the side with the help of the flow of the air. Snake in the cave and Tiger in the mountain missed again. As for Chu Mu, he followed the flow of air in midair and turned around again. Unexpectedly, he came back. His sword carried a bright sword light as it slashed towards the snake in the cave. This sword was completely out of expectations. Snake in the cave was so scared that her face turned pale. Chu Mu used the swallow return principle to perform this move. It was unexpected. Snake in the cave, who was in the air, did not have the same advantage as Yunzhong. She quickly waved her snake-shaped sword to protect herself. At the same time, she desperately twisted her body. Suddenly, she felt a tearing pain in her left arm. A terrifying force kept drilling into her body. It was as if it wanted to destroy her meridians and tear everything apart. Snake in the cave quickly slid down and shouted, "His mentality is strange." She was glad that she tried her best to avoid that sword. Otherwise, she would have been killed on the spot. She could not help but feel terrified. She quickly used her sword energy and mentality to expel the Tianyuan sword energy and the tearing mentality that invaded her body. She did not have the time to deal with Chu Mu. Tiger's body shook and he let out a loud roar. He stomped hard on the ground, and his whole body rushed up into the air. He held his sword tightly with both hands and slashed it from bottom to top towards Chu Mu as if he could cut through steel. Second brother, control this guy in the air. Yunzhong, he immediately used his sword energy to transmit his voice. While Yamanaka Tiger was attacking Chu Mu, he hurriedly used his secret technique. Sword energy surged out from his back, and a pair of sword energy wings grew out. This pair of wings resembled the wings of a cloud crane, which was the origin of his nickname, Cloud Crane. In the air, Yunzhonghe had a huge advantage. He felt that if he fixed Chu Mu in midair, he would be able to use his advantage to kill Chu Mu. Yamanaka Tiger also understood this, so he did not use any sword moves. Instead, he just blasted out streams of Xiantian sword energy. Each stream of Xiantian sword energy carried a trace of the mentality of Earth. They were extremely heavy, and each stream of sword energy was like a crushing mountain, rushing straight towards Chu Mu. There was nowhere for Chu Mu to dodge. One is temporarily unable to fight, and the remaining two are the best opportunity. I'll kill one first. Chu Mu's mind was spinning rapidly. The situation in front of him was clear at a glance. He focused all of his attention and quickly calculated, making use of everything around him. After Yunzhong, he spread his wings. His speed increased by several times. The two short swords were like the sharp claws of a Yunzhonghe, and they were about to tear Chu Mu into pieces. With Yunzhonghe's attack above him and Yamanaka Tiger's sword energy below him, Chu Mu was stuck in the middle. At this moment, if Snake in the cave attacked again, even Chu Mu would find it difficult to deal with him. After a short battle, he realized that Snake in the cave was very good at finding openings to attack. The sharp golden sword appeared in his left hand, and Chu Mu raised it up. He performed Ardent Wind and attacked Yunzhonghe. He already knew that Chu Mu would use two swords, but when he saw Chu Mu perform a sword move with his left hand, he was still shocked. He quickly flew up into the sky. Chu Mu also performed Ardent Wind with his right hand. It contained the mentality of tearing, and it directly tore apart the mountain-like sword energy. The horrifying wind rushed towards Yamanaka Tiger with an incomparable sharpness. Violent tiger swordsmanships, soaring tiger. The huge sword was waved, and a lifelike, ferocious tiger appeared. It let out a horrifying roar and rushed towards the sky. Boom! Soaring tiger and ardent wind collapsed at the same time. In terms of mentality, ardent wind was stronger than soaring tiger. But in terms of sword energy, soaring tiger was stronger than ardent wind. The two were almost on par. Chu Mu's body landed, and he took the opportunity to stab at Snake in the cave, who was standing quietly on the side. Snake in the cave was trying his best to expel the heaven origin, sword chi, and the mentality of tearing that had invaded his meridians. He was also paying attention. When he saw Chu Mu's attack, his expression changed slightly. He held his snake-shaped sword tightly and was about to counterattack. The sharp golden sword knocked away the snake-shaped sword. The chopping wind sword carried a horrifying dark golden luster. It ignored the space and slashed toward Snake in the cave's snow-white neck. In the next second, blood would splatter everywhere. "Third brother!" Yamanaka Tiger roared and hurriedly attacked with his sword. "Third sister!" In the sky, Yunjong-he's expression also changed. He spread his wings, and with a swoosh he fell to the ground like a shooting star. No matter what, they could not let Chu Mu kill Snake in the cave. Although the 5 fierce of the desolate border were all extremely evil people, they were very close to each other. "This is the moment I have been waiting for." Chu Mu's eyes flashed. The sword that was originally aimed at Snake in the cave suddenly changed direction. His whole body instantly surged with an aura that was like a mountain of swords descending. It was vast, overbearing, and contained countless sharpness. Chu Mu's body seemed to have become 10 times bigger in an instant, like a giant. "It's a sword move attack." Yamanaka Tiger immediately realized that this guy's real target was him. Attacking Snake in the cave was just a trick. "I will let you have a taste of the power of my Tiger Burst Sword." Yamanaka Tiger's body also surged with an overbearing sharpness. This aura was extremely strong, and it carried a sense of ferocity. It was also a sword move attack, but there was a slight difference. Yunjong, he, and Snake in the cave also realized what was going on. When they saw Chu Mu use a sword move to fight against their second brother's sword move attack, they could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Yamanaka Tiger's sword move had been comprehended to the small success level. Moreover, it had been a few years since he had reached the small success level. Among the 5 fierce of the desolate border, he was the one who comprehended the sword move the most after the one-eyed dragon. Moreover, the 5 fierce of the desolate border were extremely ferocious, and their killing intent was astonishing. Because they had gone through a lot of hardships when they were young, and because they had killed many people in the future, their willpower was incomparably firm, and it also increased the power of their sword move attack. They believed that a student who came from the Sword Mansion had not experienced much hardships. No matter how firm his willpower was, it was absolutely impossible for him to compare with theirs. Chu Mu was also a little surprised by Yamanaka Tiger's sword move. It was very powerful, and it was not inferior to his at all. Chu Mu's sword move was so powerful purely because of his monstrous comprehension ability. However, Yamanaka Tiger's sword move was so powerful because of the accumulation of time and his various experiences. Tiger Burst sword against Prison Break sword. The power of both sides was almost equal. Therefore, the moment they collided, a short confrontation occurred, and they were in a deadlock. Good chance. Yunjong, he was delighted. He swung his sword, and a strong sword aura surged. As long as it hit Chu Mu, even if it could not kill Chu Mu, it could still interfere with Chu Mu. At that time, Yunjong-he's sword move attack would definitely be unbalanced, and he would be killed by Yamanaka Tiger's sword move. He had seen with his own eyes that those who were hit by Yamanaka Tiger's sword move would instantly explode into a bloody mist. Yunjong, he subconsciously licked his lips. He seemed to have tasted Chu Mu's blood. If it was before, I'm afraid I would have let you have your way. But now, feeling the sword move coming from above, Chu Mu secretly smiled. The ripping concept emerged, and it flowed into the sword in his hand like water, shining with a dark golden luster. In an instant, the ripping concept magically merged with the sword move. Ever since he saw Han Ruoshua kill the small 4-striped mutated blood demon in the blood demon territory, Chu Mu had been comprehending how to combine the concept with the sword move to make the Prison Break sword even more powerful. After a long time of research, Chu Mu had finally understood it thoroughly and could successfully integrate the ripping concept into the sword move. Because the ripping concept was a mutated concept, Once it was integrated into the sword move, its power would increase even more. It was even stronger than Han Ruoshiwe's sword move that day. In an instant, Yamanaka Tiger felt that the sword move attack that was originally resisting his Tiger Burst sword had suddenly become even more terrifying, and its sharpness had increased by several times. In an instant, Tiger Burst sword could not resist at all. It was directly torn apart by the opponent. The speed of the sword was too fast, and he had no time to dodge. He was immediately pierced by the sword. This sword, Chu Mu called it prison-breaking space-shattering sword. Yunzhong's sword Qi missed and bombarded the ground, creating a hole. Half of Yamanaka Tiger's body spurted out blood, and half of his body was almost torn apart. It was extremely miserable. He kept wailing in agony. It was simply too painful for him to bear. Second brother, Yunzhong and Snake in the cave's expressions changed drastically. Their teeth were about to crack, and their voices were sorrowful. Chu Mu turned his body, and the sharp golden sword slashed across Yamanaka Tiger's neck. Suddenly, Yamanaka Tiger's neck flew high into the air. His eyes were wide open and filled with unwillingness. Lightly touching the ground with the tip of his foot, Chu Mu turned around and killed Snake in the cave. The snake in the hole that hadn't completely forced out the ripping concept wasn't Chu Mu's opponent. Even if it erupted in anger and grief, it instead made her lose her composure and was killed by Chu Mu's violent wind-shocking kill. Third sister, seeing his second brother, Yamanaka Tiger, and his third sister Snake in the cave die in front of him, Yunzhong felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Then he saw Chu Mu's sword coming at him. His body quivered, and his strong will to live made him fly up into the sky. Although he wanted to kill Chu Mu immediately to avenge Yamanaka Tiger and Snake in the cave, he was obviously not Chu Mu's match. Leaving was the only way. Only by leaving this place could he have a chance to avenge the dead. One had to admit that Yunzhong was very decisive. If such a person escaped, it would be a huge problem. Yunzhong had a pair of sword Qi wings, and he flew dozens of meters into the sky. Just as Chu Mu was about to use the sky-traversing secret technique, he suddenly thought of something. He took out a wolf-tooth short sword from his spatial bracelet and poured the Tianyuan sword Qi and ripping concept into it. He raised his hand and shot it out, instantly hitting Yunzhong. Yunzhong was like a bird that was hit by an arrow. He swayed and fell down. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 319. The deaths of the Tiger Cave Snake and Yunzhong, he did not attract the attention of others. Firstly, no one saw Chu Mu kill the three of them with their own eyes. After killing them, Chu Mu did not care about their corpses and only took away the valuable items. Therefore, even if someone saw the corpses later and recognized them, they would only be surprised. They would not know who did it. Since they did not know who killed the three of them, it was naturally not that shocking. Secondly, there was an even bigger matter. The appearance of the heaven wasteland giant beast confirmed the authenticity of the legend. Then, since the legend of the heaven wasteland giant beast was true, then the legends that existed after the Heaven Wasteland giant beast should also be true. Heaven Wasteland underground palace. Inside the cave, Chu Mu looked outside. His eyes became deep. Ever since he killed 3 of the 5 evils of the desolate border, he had been staying inside the cave to cultivate. In these few days, there was a constant stream of news regarding the legend of the Heaven Wasteland underground palace. This news allowed Chu Mu to have a more direct understanding of the so-called Heaven Wasteland underground palace. It was rumored that the last time the Heaven Wasteland underground palace appeared was 3,000 years ago. At that time, a Heaven Wasteland giant beast also appeared. Around 10 days after that Heaven Wasteland giant beast appeared, the Heaven Wasteland underground palace also appeared. Following that, Many people flipped through various ancient books to find records regarding the Heaven Wasteland giant beast and the Heaven Wasteland underground palace. They also found many records left behind. It turned out that the Heaven Wasteland Earth Palace had already appeared 12,000 years ago, and after that it would appear once every 3,000 years. Every time it appeared, a Heaven Wasteland giant beast would appear first, and no one knew where it would fly to. It could be said that every time a Heaven Wasteland giant beast appeared, it was a sign of the Heaven Wasteland underground palace's appearance. As for whether it was the same 10,000 years ago, it was hard to know because the ancient books that those people looked through at most recorded 10,000 years ago. And every time the Heaven Wasteland underground palace disappeared, within 3,000 years, generation after generation, it gradually became a legend that was buried in the torrent of history until the next time it appeared in the world. Dozens of red-crowned cranes landed in the mining area and were managed by specialized people. A large group of people quickly headed towards Chumu's cave. The restrictions outside were suddenly triggered. Chumu walked outside and was immediately stunned. He saw a few familiar faces. They were the students on the Great Kuin Sword Abode's bronze sword list. "Junior Brother Chu, you really are here." A hearty voice laughed. "Senior Brother Zhuge. Senior Sister Han." Chumu cupped his hands. He suddenly recalled that perhaps they had come here for the Heaven Wasteland Earth Palace of the modern world. There were more than 60 students on the bronze sword ranking. 10,000 Pan Fu Shi, Yi Shaokai, and Zhu Tianzhao were among them. Other than Zhu Tianzhao, who was coldly staring at Chumu and did not greet him, the others nodded at Chumu. Zhu Tianzhao was surprised that Chumu was still alive and had not been killed. Other than the 60 students on the bronze sword list, there were 11 other people he had never seen before. They all looked to be in their 50s or 60s. After introductions, 10 of the 11 people were elders from the 10 academies of the Inner Palace. The last one was the Great Elder of the Inner Palace. The 10 elders and the Great Elder all knew about Chumu because they had personally seen Chumu's performance in the Sword Art King competition. They were very shocked by Chumu's sword art and subconsciously felt that even they might not be a match for Chumu in terms of sword art. After that, Chumu had entered the Inner Palace for less than a year and obtained the 100th place on the bronze sword list. This was also a shocking matter. Naturally, the elders were more familiar with Chumu. Towards a genius student like Chumu, the elders' attitudes were clearly very kind. Even the Great Elder, who usually did not smile, smiled at Chumu and greeted him. This made the other students somewhat envious, especially Zhu Tianzhao, who was incomparably jealous. Why did Chumu become the focus of everyone's attention? Was he only the 100th place on the bronze sword list? People were like this. If you like someone, you would think that their actions were good. Once you did not like someone, even if they were doing something good, you would think that they were just trying to please the crowd. After a round of introductions, everyone explained their intentions. Chumu also confirmed that they were indeed here for the so-called Heaven Wasteland Palace. The underground palace has appeared. A sword guard who heard the news roared, "Let's go!" The group immediately left the mining area and quickly headed towards the Heaven Wasteland Valley. This time, in addition to our Great Kuin Sword Mansion, the people from the 4 major sword sects will definitely appear. An elder said, "I think, in addition to the people from the 4 major sword sects, the people from the Proud Moon House and the Scattered Sword Alliance should also appear. It's normal for them to appear. We can't stop them. However, the people from the Black Hawk Dynasty and the Black Hawk Sword Mansion will definitely not allow them to enter the underground palace." That's right. Half of the Heaven Wasteland mountain range is within the Black Hawk Dynasty. The Heaven Wasteland Valley is close to the border of the Black Hawk Dynasty. The people from the Black Hawk Sword Mansion will definitely know about this phenomenon. It's inevitable that they will appear. However, no matter what, they can't let their students enter the Heaven Wasteland Palace. The Great Kuin Dynasty and the Black Hawk dynasty had always been enemies. Therefore, the people from the Great Kuin Sword Mansion and the Black Hawk Sword Mansion would naturally not get along well. One by one, they used their movement techniques and quickly headed towards the Heaven Wasteland Valley. At the same time, there was also a large group of people from other directions. They were wave after wave heading towards the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Looking at their clothes, it was clear that they came from different forces. Not long after, Chumu and dozens of people arrived at the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Without stopping, they directly entered the Heaven Wasteland Valley and quickly headed towards the center of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. This was decided by the elders of the Sword Mansion. It was said that the Heaven Wasteland Palace would appear at a fixed location, which was the center of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Many people rushed into the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Many swordsmen who were looking for spiritual herbs like the Heaven Wasteland root in the Heaven Wasteland Valley were alerted and followed them to the center of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. After a while, the students of the Great Kuin Sword Mansion arrived at the center of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. They were all stunned. In front of them, they saw a huge bronze gate. The gate was 100 meters tall and stood on the ground of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. It emitted a heavy and ancient, desolate aura. The bronze gate was tightly shut. The runes on it were unusually clear and filled with various mysterious forces. At one glance, everyone felt that their souls were shocked and could not move for a while. Simple, heavy, and ancient, on the bronze gate there was an aura that had settled down over the years. It was like the mottled brilliance left behind by the river of time. Is this the Heaven Wasteland Palace? After a long while, someone muttered to himself. He could not hide the shock in his voice. According to the records, this should be the gate of the Heaven Wasteland Palace. Once it is opened, we can enter the Heaven Wasteland Palace, an elder said with a dazed look. Even with his cultivation that was far beyond the Chi-Hai realm, he could not maintain his composure. He was almost lost in the ancient aura of the Bronze Gate. As for the Chi Transformation Realm swordsmen, they were all shocked and almost lost in the vicissitudes of history. Chu Mu was the first Chi Transformation Realm swordsman to wake up. He could not help but feel frightened. If someone attacked him at this time, he would definitely die. At the same time, they were filled with fear towards the bronze door. Amidst their fear, there was also a deep sense of curiosity. After a while, the others also woke up and were still amazed. Chu Mu glanced around and found that other than the people of the Great Kuin Sword Mansion, there were many people surrounding the Bronze Gate. Judging from their clothes, they were swordsmen from different forces. The swordsmen from the Great Kuin Sword Mansion were divided into 7 groups, according to their camps. There was one place Chu Mu recognized because the clothes they were wearing were the clothes of Wang Long and his 2 senior brothers who had died under his sword. They were exactly the same, clearly coming from Emo Luo sword sect swordsmen. In addition, there were other uniform clothes. They should be swordsmen from the King Kong sword sect, Blackwater sword sect, and Real Flame sword sect. The great elder introduced the different forces to the students. The people over there are from the Proud Moon Tower, and the people over there are from the Scattered Sword Alliance. The other group should belong to the Scattered Sword Alliance, and the other group should belong to the Scattered Sword Alliance. The 4 major sword sects, the Proud Moon Tower, the Scattered Sword Union, the Pure Scattered Sword Swordsmen, and the Great Kuin Sword Mansion. There were a total of 8 camps of swordsmen gathered at the Bronze Gate of the Heaven Wasteland Palace, waiting for the Bronze Gate to open. Naturally, they had also discovered each other. Thus, they began to tease each other. No matter what, people from different camps were competitors to them. The strength of each of the 4 major sword sects is comparable to the strength of our sword mansion. Therefore, the strength of their inner palace students is also very strong. They are comparable to the students on the bronze sword ranking of our sword mansion. As for the Proud Moon Tower and the Scattered Sword Union, although they are not as strong as our sword mansion, they also have some genius swordsmen who are comparable to the top 10 of the bronze sword ranking of our sword mansion. The first elder said slowly, according to the records, after the gate of the Heaven Wasteland Palace opens, only swordsmen below the Chi High Realm can enter. Therefore, they are all your competitors. Chu Mu had already heard that only sword artists under the Chi High Realm could enter, so he wasn't the slightest bit surprised. While waiting for the bronze gate to open, the disciples of the four major sword sects were teasing each other. Chu Mu found that Zhugeming and the others seemed to know some of the disciples of the four major sword sects and the proud Moon Tower's scattered sword union. However, their relationship was not very good. Listening to their tit-for-tat tone, there seemed to be some animosity between them. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chu Mu gradually learned about the people of the four major sword sects, the proud Moon Tower, and the scattered sword union, who were more powerful and worthy of his attention. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 320. Sometimes waiting was boring, but waiting here was not boring at all. Chu Mu listened to Zhugeming and the others' introductions and gradually understood the four great sword sects and the proud Moon Towers, scattered sword alliances, outstanding genius swordsmen. He paid attention to them one by one because these people could very well become his enemies in the underground palace. He also listened to the elders' explanation of the Heaven Wasteland Palace, such as the desolate Qi, the Heaven Wasteland route, and other things that would exist in the Heaven Wasteland Palace. The huge bronze door did not open for a long time. It stood in the center of the Heaven Wasteland Valley, looking very heavy. Both sides of the bronze door could be seen clearly. It was the scenery of the Heaven Wasteland Valley. Therefore, Chu Mu was very curious about what it would be like after the bronze door opened. Not long after, everyone quieted down. They were too lazy to say anything. After all, there was no point in continuing to ridicule the other side. It was better to wait for the bronze door to open. Although they did not say anything, the swordsmen still looked at each other with their eyes. The meaning was obvious. They wanted to wait until they entered the underground palace to settle the score. According to the ancient records, there are countless treasures in the Heaven Wasteland Palace. At the same time, there are countless dangers. If you are not careful, you could lose your life in there. An elder said to Chu Mu and the other 60 disciples on the bronze sword ranking. Therefore, after entering the underground palace, you must be very careful. Remember not to be blinded by greed and put yourself in a dangerous situation. You must know that us swordsmen strengthen ourselves. It is a process of fighting against the heavens and earth. We must have the determination and confidence to move forward. But at the same time, we must have the wisdom and wisdom. We cannot just rely on hot-bloodedness. The disciples all nodded and remembered the elders' words. Their talent and temperament determined that they were not ordinary. Naturally, they could understand the elders' meaning. A swordsman must have a sharp edge. They would rather break than bend, but did not mean that they would blindly act recklessly. Confidence, courage, determination, talent, wisdom, and so on were the necessary qualities for an excellent swordsman. If one wanted to walk further in the dangerous world of swordsmen and become stronger, one had to possess all sorts of qualities. Otherwise, lacking one of them could lead to death. Throughout the ages, there were many geniuses with outstanding talent that were rarely seen in 100 years or even 1,000 years. However, due to some non-talent factors, they died prematurely like falling meteors. On the contrary, some swordsmen with average talent but outstanding temperament would often step on the dangers along the way to reach the peak, becoming legends that were praised by countless people. Even now, I've experienced this. Sometimes, no matter how outstanding one's talent is, if one doesn't have enough willpower to support it, it will be nothing in the end. One of the sword mansion's bronze sword ranking side. The best example is a senior who walked out of our sword mansion 100 years ago. His talent could only be considered average among the many geniuses of the sword mansion, but he fought steadily and steadily. In the end, he soared into the sky and became a legend. He was revered by later generations as the Qingming sword of Gojoseon, said another student who was familiar with the books. When the Qingming sword of Gojoseon was mentioned, everyone revealed a solemn and respectful expression. Even Zhu Tianzhao was the same. The Qingming sword of Gojoseon was a legend of the great Qin sword mansion. He was a legend of the entire great Qin dynasty. The most interesting thing was that this senior, the Qingming sword of Gojoseon, was not a member of the royal family. Instead, he came from a low-grade sword sect. Thinking of this, some people could not help but look at Chumu. Of course, they did not think that Chumu would become a legend like the Qingming sword of Gojoseon. They only subconsciously thought that Chumu also came from a low-grade sword sect and was now a rather famous person in the sword mansion. After all, there was only one legend like the Qingming sword of Gojoseon in the sword mansion in hundreds of years. Time passed bit by bit. As the crowd discussed in low voices, Chumu listened and gradually understood more. Suddenly, a sharp sound rang out from the distant sky. It was louder and louder, and it was so dense that it caused people to raise their heads to look. Immediately, they saw a black mass in the sky, surging over like a dark cloud. That's... Someone revealed a puzzled expression. Immediately, the expressions of the elders of the great Qin sword mansion changed. It was extremely ugly, and it even carried a hint of anger and faint killing intent. This was because they already knew what the black mass was. Damn, the Black Hawk sword mansion. They actually rushed over. An elder said in a low voice. His voice was filled with anger and unwillingness. Other than Chumu, the other students on the bronze sword ranking also had ugly expressions. Clearly, they did not like the Black Hawk sword mansion and even viewed them as enemies. As for Chumu, because he had never interacted with the people of the Black Hawk sword mansion, he did not feel anything. Although he occasionally heard other people speak of the Black Hawk sword mansion as enemies, Chumu was not a person who was easily influenced by others. He had his own principles and judgment. Sometimes friends could become enemies, and sometimes enemies could become friends. Not long after, the black clouds in the sky surged over. It was a giant black hawk. Its powerful claws were curled up, and it looked like its lethality was much stronger than the red-crowned cranes. This kind of black hawk's combat power was much stronger than the red-crowned cranes. It was a demonic beast that actively attacked. It was not easy to raise. The four major sword sects, Proud Moon House and Scattered Sword Alliance, were gloating. This was because they all knew of the conflict between the Black Hawk Sword Mansion and the Great Qin Sword Mansion. Now that the Black Hawk Sword Mansion had appeared, they did not find it strange. After all, a section of the desolate Sky Mountain Range was within the Black Hawk dynasty. One by one, the ferocious giant Black Hawks landed on the ground. From the backs of the Black Hawks, people jumped down one after another. In terms of numbers, there were more than 20 people from the Great Qin Sword Mansion. Almost all the students on the bronze sword ranking of the Black Hawk Sword Mansion had come out. Hee, looks like it's quite lively. The Black Hawk Sword Mansion's group was led by a dozen elders. They should be at the same level as the Inner Mansion's elders. Each of them was wearing a black robe. Their sword chi was sharp, and they even looked a little overbearing. The legend is true. This desolate sky palace has indeed appeared. This is my Black Hawk Sword Mansion's fortune. These people's intention was to treat this desolate sky palace as their Black Hawk Sword Mansions. This made the Great Qin Sword Mansion's elders' faces as black as the bottom of a pot. Black Hawk Sword Mansion, this is the Great Qin dynasty's territory. You have trespassed into our dynasty's territory. Isn't that too rude? An elder said coldly. Who said that this is the Great Qin dynasty's territory? Let me tell you, this is the Black Hawk dynasty's territory. It is under the jurisdiction of the Black Hawk dynasty. An elder from the Black Hawk Sword Mansion said with an extremely rude tone. Soon after, he sneered. Even if this is the great Kuin dynasty's territory, our Black Hawk Sword Mansion can come and go as we please. What can you do? Do you want to start a war? You. The great Kuin Sword Mansion's elder's face immediately turned red. Elder Lin, what's the point of talking about manners with a bunch of beasts? An elder beside him said. Immediately, the elder's anger dissipated. He even revealed a smile and agreed. Elder Tang is right. I was too foolish to talk about manners with a bunch of beasts. That's something only a human would understand. The Black Hawk Dynasty's Black Hawk Sword Mansion had the words Black Hawk in front of it. The Black Hawk was a type of demonic beast. It was not wrong to call it a beast. Their conversation immediately made the others laugh. As for the Black Hawk Sword Mansion's elders and students, their faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Their eyes were filled with anger and sharp killing intent. Do you want to start a war with our Black Hawk Sword Mansion? Don't forget that your great Kuin Sword Mansion is no match for us. An elder from the Black Hawk Sword Mansion roared furiously. Did any of you hear that our great Kuin Sword Mansion wants to start a war with the Black Hawk Sword Mansion? An elder from the great Kuin Sword Mansion had an innocent expression. He looked here and there before continuing. Furthermore, we were just discussing that beasts are not as polite as humans. Why are you people from the Black Hawk Sword Mansion joining in the fun? The elder's words immediately caused another round of roaring laughter. As for the Black Hawk Sword Mansion's people, their faces turned even uglier. However, they did not refute. Once they refuted, wouldn't they be calling them beasts? People from the great Kuin Sword Mansion, don't try to win a battle of words. Everything will wait until we enter the Heaven, Wasteland, Earth Palace before we decide the victor. At that time, we will let you understand that your great Kuin Sword Mansion is nothing but a mouth. A Black Hawk Sword Mansion's student shouted coldly. That's right, a bunch of losers. Another Black Hawk Sword Mansion's student also shouted. The Black Hawk Sword Mansion students all revealed a cold smile. Whether you are losers or not, come out and try now. Fu, she took a step forward. His face was filled with cold anger. His eyes glowed faintly as he stared at the Black Hawk Sword Mansion students. The other students also glared angrily. Some of them even held onto their sword hilts. This is the territory of the great Kuin dynasty. Whether you admit it or not, this is the truth. Therefore, don't be too arrogant. An elder from the proud Moon Tower frowned and said coldly. The Scattered Sword Alliance's people also stepped forward. Only the 4 major sword sects were watching from the sidelines. Strictly speaking, the proud Moon Tower and the Scattered Sword Alliance were truly located within the great Kuin dynasty. Although the 4 major sword sects were also considered to be within the great Kuin dynasty, they had their own emptiness realm, which was similar to the great Kuin emptiness realm. In addition, their strength was not inferior to the great Kuin Sword Mansion. Therefore, they did not get along well with the great Kuin Sword Mansion. Cut the crap. Let's wait until we enter the Heaven, Wasteland, Earth Palace. Let's see who's the real deal. An elder from the Black Hawk Sword Mansion said. Listen up. Once the boys of the Black Hawk Sword Mansion enter the Heaven, Wasteland, Earth Palace, you will target the great Kuin Sword Mansion's people. Don't let them get anything. It's best if they all stay in the Earth Palace. An elder from the Black Hawk Sword Mansion said brazenly. Elder, don't worry. I guarantee that when the time comes, none of the 60 people from the great Kuin Sword Mansion will be able to escape. A Black Hawk Sword Mansion's student laughed mischievously. It's a pity that only 60 of them came. If all of them came, none of them would be able to leave. Another student also laughed mischievously. To say such words so directly, it could be seen how unreasonable and arrogant the Black Hawk Sword Mansion was. They did not put the great Kuin Sword Mansion in their eyes. As for Chu Mu, his impression of the Black Shadow Sword Mansion plummeted. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qijian. come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation.